home of the Philadelphia Eagles.
They've got him, it's a sack!
Sixers.
Oh, baby!
And Flyers.
He scored!
97.3 ESPN. WENJ. WENJ HD, Millville, Atlantic City. A Town Square media station serving all of South Jersey.
Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill here on President's Day. I know for some people out there, this is a day that they are off from work. But we are still here to entertain you here on 97.3 ESPN. After a busy sports weekend, Josh Hennig back in the saddle filling in for Mike Gill this week. Or as Nick Earnshaw calls him, the world traveler, Mike Gill. We got a lot to get into because Bryce Harper spoke yesterday, and I don't know how many people are happy with what he had to say. Also, Nick Castellanos opened his mouth again this weekend, now that he's a Padre. Do we look at Castellanos a little differently after what he said this weekend? NBA All-Star Game, I did not watch it live, honestly. I rewatched it in the replay a little bit later in the evening. And it was actually fun. They were actually competing. Tyrese Maxey had a lot to say about it after the game. We'll get to Maxey's thoughts, as he was actually one of the stars of the weekend. Between him and BJ Edgecombe, the Sixers represented very well at the NBA All-Star Weekend. On top of all that, it is President's Day. So I thought we'd have a little fun on the text board at 609-403-0973. You may or may not know that the term Mount Rushmore is because there are 4 men who are all former presidents whose heads are on the aforementioned Mount Rushmore. So, you know what? We are going to do something fun today. Let's have a little Mount Rushmore of Philadelphia sports. What is your Mount Rushmore? And what I'm going to do is I am going to gather everyone's answers throughout the day. Then, after the show tonight, I am going to take the most popular answers and create a poll question. And throughout the week, we will reveal the poll results. So, just to use an example, if the top 4 votes for Eagles Mount Rushmore are, let's say it's Brian Dawkins, Jason Kelsey, Jalen Hurts, and Brian Westbrook. I'll put a poll question up. Who is the ultimate Eagles Mount Rushmore? People will vote. And by the end of the week, we will have a voted on and decided Mount Rushmore that we all can argue about here on 97.3 ESPN. So text in, what is your Philadelphia sports Mount Rushmore? 1 Eagle, 1 Philly, 1 Sixer, 1 Flyer on the Whitehorse RV text board at 609-403-0973. Coming up on the show today, Mike McGarry, the Press of Atlantic City, joins coming up at around 2:25, 2:30 today to get into his thoughts on the sports weekend. Geoff Kerr, of course, he's covered the Phillies for us for 97.3 ESPN. We'll get his thoughts on Harper, Castellanos, and more we can get Kerr's. I wonder what Kerr has to say about Adolis Garcia's large biceps, because that seems to be a topic for a lot of the media heading out of yesterday's appearance. Excuse me. Also, we have Football at 4. Geoff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast and Philly Voice. I'm excited to talk to Geoff Mosher today because there were 2 transactions made today by the Miami Dolphins. And while one of them I have zero interest in, I am very, very intrigued by one of the players the Miami Dolphins released today. We'll see what Geoff Mosher thinks about how guys being released, and it's not even March yet. We got a month basically until free agency opens. How do these moves impact the Eagles' offseason? And, of course, Knicks Nuggets back in his regular time slot, 4:30 for today's Knicks Nuggets with Nick Earnshaw here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. And as I said, text board is open. Your thoughts, we'll get into what Harper had to say, what Castellanos had to say this weekend, and Maxey as well. But again, Mount Rushmore, you got to pick one from every team. One Eagle, one Sixer, one Flyer. When I compile all the answers, we will run a poll each day of the week, and then by the end of the week, we will have a 97.3 ESPN voted upon, compiled Mount Rushmore, and I'm sure we will all argue about it. Text in to the Whitehorse RV text board at 609-403-0973. Whitehorse RV Center in Williamstown and Galloway. Your RV adventure starts here at Whitehorse RV. If it wasn't for Bryce Harper, I feel like I would be opening the show today talking about the All-Star game yesterday. But instead of talking about Maxey and Edgecombe, Bryce Harper and his aggressively serious tone seemed to take over my timeline yesterday, and I couldn't avoid it. I couldn't get away from it. You know, when I am not working, I try to not spend a lot of time on social media because half the stuff on social media is just brain rot. But then I saw people quoting Bryce Harper, and I was like, all right, let me go and find what Harper actually said. Because, you know, we don't always get the tone from quotes. So, again, this is why I said last week here on the Sports Bash, Josh Hennig filling for Mike Gill here on 97.3 ESPN. I said last week, the Castellanos 4-page handwritten letter would have been a lot better if he would have just filmed himself saying all of that. We could have actually gotten his tone and intention with a lot of that. But Bryce Harper was asked about the Dave Dombrowski comments. Now, the fact that we're asking about something that happened in October and February does feel a little bit odd to me, that Bryce Harper feels the way he does all these months later. So let's get it from the man himself. I don't want to speak for Bryce Harper. I don't want to speak for the 2-time MVP award winner. Here is the question and the answer about Bryce Harper's reaction to Dave Dombrowski's comments back in October.
Dave made those comments in October, and then you wore that Not Elite T-shirt, taking BP one day. How much of a motivator is that to you, or has that been to you this off season?
Not really. I mean, I don't get motivated by that kind of stuff. You know, for me, it was kind of wild, the whole situation of that happening. I think the big thing for me was, when we first met with this organization, it was, hey, we're always going to keep things in-house, and we expect you to do the same thing. And so, when that didn't happen, kind of took me for a run a little bit.
So a couple of reactions to what Harper said. Number one, he's trying to frame it like there was something said by Dave Dombrowski that was like proprietary information or behind the scenes. And I think Harper here is being a bit of a hypocrite, because back in 2020, when he wanted the Phillies to re-sign JT Realmuto, he didn't go to the front office and have a one-on-one conversation behind closed doors saying, no, he made it very vocal, very public that you need to re-sign this guy. You must, BCIB, right? All that kind of stuff. Dave Dombrowski didn't say anything about negotiating contracts, about Harper's future. He made a comment that was, well, frankly obvious. We all can look up stats. We all saw that Harper statistically had one of the worst years of his career last year. So I don't know why Dombrowski saying that he did not have an elite season causes a reaction where Harper feels like something was said that was out of bounds, or again, I'm not fully sure where Harper is coming from. But again, a 261 batting average. That is the worst batting average he has had since his first year in Philadelphia, 2019. A 357 on base percentage. That is the worst on base percentage since he was in Washington in 2014. By the way, his slugging percentage of 487 last year, that was the worst since he was in Washington in 2016. So, I don't know why Harper thinks that what Dombrowski said was so out of turn, but at least Harper admits that he is aware that he did not play up to his own ability and potential last season.
I don't know. It's part of it, I guess. It's kind of a wild situation. That even happening. Obviously, I didn't have the year that I wanted. Obviously, I didn't have the postseason I wanted. My numbers weren't where they needed to be. I know that, and I don't need to be motivated to be great, in my career or anything else. So that's just not a motivating factor for me.
Now, he might say it's not a motivating factor for him. But then, why did he wear the T-shirt? Why did he make the comments he made online? Why is he responding the way he is? And my mind goes back to, and I'm not the only person to bring this up, when the Braves Arcia said what he said about Harper, he got mad and he got motivated. I don't think Dombrowski said this to get under Harper's skin. I think Dombrowski was just answering a question. So if Harper needs to take this as some sort of wake-up call, me against Dombrowski, I wanted a contract extension, you won't give me a raise, I'm going to show you. You know what? Take it for how you need to, Harper, because at the end of the day, this team is not making any playoff run unless Bryce Harper steps up to the plate and does Bryce Harper things. Then Harper circles back to the Dave Dombrowski comments again.
For Dave to come out and say those things, it's kind of wild to me still. I mean, they made the shirts for me, and I wore them, So, I mean, if they're going to make them, I'm going to wear them.
Did you have a chance to talk to Dave about what he meant by what he was saying or why he did say it?
I just think that the conclusion is, obviously we keep things in-house, and that's just how it, how it's always been. And in that moment, it just didn't happen, and I think my locker is always open for them to come and talk to me, and vice versa. So, it is what it is right now.
Very, very odd perspective from Bryce Harper, and I've always viewed Bryce Harper as a guy that I felt like had a little more self-awareness. He sounds like a child. He sounds like he's like someone said something mean about me on Twitter, or and the whole behind this, like, what is it of what Dombrowski said needs to be said behind closed doors? Like, what was said? Like, maybe the problem is me. I don't understand it. I don't understand how Bryce Harper thinks that this is some negative thing. Dombrowski was asked a question. He answered it honestly. He went on foul territory with A.J. Brzezinski and Scott Braun and Eric Kratz, clarified the statement. And for whatever reason, Harper is still taking offense to it months later. Either Bryce Harper is channeling his inner Michael Jordan and trying to, be one of these guys who takes, things personal and drives him. Or maybe he's just, I don't know. It makes zero sense to me why this is bothering Harper. And then he says, my locker room is open and vice versa. Well, Bryce, they asked you if you talked to Dombrowski. You said you haven't, but then you said he can come talk to me anytime and I can talk to him anytime. So it sounds like to me that you're mad about something and you just won't talk to the guy. It's such a strange situation to me. I think Bryce is in the wrong here. And it's very difficult for me to say that, but I feel like Bryce has shown a history of being self-aware and having the depth of being able to handle a lot of different things swirling around him This is the first time that I can remember that, at least in his Philadelphia tenure, that Harper has been tone deaf. And that's why I had to play the audio, because you hear how serious he is. You hear how matter-of-fact he sounds. The only time he joked was about the T-shirt. And even that joke didn't land very well for me, because he says, well, they gave me the T-shirt and I wore it. So what, if someone gives you a shirt that has, foul language or curse words on it, you're going to wear that too? If someone hands you a T-shirt endorsing a product that is against one of your sponsors, you're going to wear that too? Like, for him to say, they handed me the T-shirt and I'm going to wear it if you hand it to me, that's tone deaf too. Because I could hand Bryce Harper a T-shirt that's got, racist language on it. Is he going to wear it because I handed it to him? Of course not. So the whole thing just screams, Harper doesn't really know what to say. He doesn't know how to verbalize his emotions. And he's just kind of like, dancing around the real issue, which is he did not handle what was said in a way that is mature, basically. That's at least how I'm taking it. Now listen, maybe what Harper said is true. And I can't believe I got to be the guy to stick up for the pious, know-it-all, future Hall of Famer Dave Dombrowski. But in this case, I got to be fair. Josh Hennig filling for Mike Gill here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. I feel like I got to be the guy who's got to stick up for Dombrowski. Maybe I'm wrong. Let's check out what the text board to say. I got a lot of texts already coming in about the Philadelphia sports Mount Rushmore. We'll get to those in just a moment at 609-403-0973. Chris from Northfield chimes in. This is Josh. I think Dave Dombrowski could have worded it better to sound it more like he's in full support of his employees. So I fully think he, in some way, did it on purpose. He wants to get under Harper's skin a little bit and push him. Chris, if that's the case, I think Dombrowski, mission accomplished. But again, I didn't, for someone who's as critical as Dave Dombrowski as I have been, I never took what he said as a negative. It was kind of Captain Obvious. Harper did not have an elite season. Check. The Phillies need Harper to beat Bryce Harper for them to win a championship. Check. Dave Dombrowski goes on the Foul Territory show saying, I never meant it as a negative at all. I was just answering a question. That's what I thought. Check. I don't think Dombrowski is some like Phil Jackson, using the media to get to his guy. I just don't see Dombrowski having that level of cunningness. But guess what, Chris? If you're saying that that's what he did, then mission accomplished. Harper's mad. Harper's extra motivated. I like it. It does seem a little weird, though. UPS Geoff chimes in on the Whitehorse RV text board at 609-403-0973. Says, I've said many times Bryce Harper is the problem with his team. He's a crybaby. It's all me, me, me. That was his problem in Washington. They need to trade him. Well, UPS Geoff, I think that you're taking it to another level that I think is a little too far. Was Harper's problem in Washington that he was a bit selfish at times? Absolutely. That is well documented. But since he's been in Philadelphia, he has not been the overly selfish guy. In Philadelphia, he's the guy who's advocated for other guys to get contracts. JT Realmuto, Kyle Schwarber, Zach Wheeler. He is a guy who has been very, very fan-friendly. He has been a guy who's been very supportive of his teammates, of the organization. So I don't think it's fair to say that his problem in Philadelphia is the same as Washington. This is the first time that I can remember him overtly acting like this, looking and sounding like the Washington Bryce Harper. Now, if you believe he's the problem with this team, my question then would be, is he the reason why they have not gotten back to the World Series since 2022? Did he have any role in getting to the World Series in 2022? I think the answer to both might be yes. But I don't think he's the overall problem with the Phillies. I think the Phillies have some leadership problems. If you want to say that Harper might be part of the group of people who maybe looked at Castellanos with the side eye instead of confronting him, maybe. But again, I don't have any feel that Harper is holding this team back. But hey, maybe I'm wrong, UPS Geoff. Whitehorse RV text board is open at 609-403-0973. We got some votes coming in for Phillies sports Mount Rushmore. We will take your text throughout the show. I'm going to compile everyone's answers at the end of the show and then make polls each day so we can come up with the consensus vote for who should be on the Mount Rushmore of Phillies sports. Jeff in Ocean City chimes in on the text board. He says, I love this question. Here's mine. He says, Mike Schmidt, Bobby Clark, Julius Erving, Chuck Bednarik. Now, that kind of goes to show that this is where it's going to come into. You're going to have some people who are going to be, hey, I am of a certain generation. I'm only going to vote for these people. I think most people agree that Michael Jack Schmidt is probably the greatest Philly of all time. So I don't mind that vote. The Bobby Clark one, I feel like that has turned into like a default for people of a certain age. Maybe people who are younger would go with another flyer in that situation. Same with Dr. J. I feel like if you're over a certain age, you're going to go Dr. J. If you're another age, you're going to go with Allen Iverson. And the same with Bednarik. I feel like Bednarik is, if you are of a certain age group, you're going to go with Iron Charlie. If you're another age group, you might go Brian Dawkins. Another age group, you might go Cunningham or McNabb. So I do feel like that is a very symbolic Mount Rushmore of, no offense, Jeff, your age. Big Alan Violent chimes in, says Mike Schmidt, Bobby Clark, Dr. J, Chuck Bednarik. So he's got the same 4 as Jeff in Ocean City. Stephen Marmore chimes in the Whitehorse RV text board at 609-403-0973. He's got a bit of a different lineup here, a little more diversified in terms of people. For the Sixers, he has Wilt Chamberlain instead of Dr. J. Very interesting choice there. Michael Jack Schmidt for the Phillies, Flyers, Bobby Clark. And he goes Brian Dawkins for the Eagles. Now, Dawkins would probably be my vote personally, but I think it's interesting how Stephen Marmore kind of mixed in different generations, different eras of Philadelphia sports. You know, he went Wilt in the 60s, Bobby Clark in the 70s, Mike Schmidt in the late 70s into the 80s, and then Dawkins late 90s into the 2000s. A couple more coming in at 609-403-0973. Angie Tucker says, I'm going to go with Reggie White. It's a good vote there. Dr. J. She also has Mike Schmidt would be her Philly, and then Lindros would get her Flyers vote. Again, another example of when did you grow up watching sports, right? Reggie White for a group of generation people was everything, right? Reggie White, you could argue Reggie White may actually be the greatest Eagle of all time. What he did in his Eagles tenure is probably going to go unmatched by almost anybody ever. I'm actually watching a documentary right now about the ABA and Dr. J. I fell asleep watching it last night. I got to continue that because I think the Dr. J stuff is very interesting to get into a conversation about. And then the Eric Lindros thing. The Lindros is fascinating because, again, if you did not grow up watching Bobby Clark and the Broad Street Bullies, but you grew up watching 90s hockey like I did, you're looking at Lindros as a symbol. Guys like him, John LeClaire, and others, they were symbols of a generation of hockey. And whether we like it or not, look, Lindros had an amazing career in a Flyers uniform. You're talking about a guy who compiled 659 points in less than 500 games played. That means that Eric Lindros averaged almost 1.5 points a game for his Flyers tenure. That is ridiculous production. aside from the fact that he was a multiple-time All-Star and Hart Trophy winner and et cetera. So, Lindros, great pull there by Angie in Tuckerton. One more text coming in at 609-403 on 973. Steven Vettner chimes in. I'm going to go Mike Schmidt, Brian Dawkins, Wilt Chamberlain, Eric Lindros. So we got some very interesting votes coming in for the Phillies Sports Mount Rushmore so far on the Whitehorse RV text board. Coming in at 609-403 0973. Yes, I know it's Concrete Charlie, not Iron Charlie. The moment I said it, that I realized I got the ones mixed up. I was thinking more of the Iron Man, Lou Gehrig in that situation. But anyway, all right. Coming up on the other side, we'll talk to Mike McGarry of the Press of Atlantic. We'll get his perspective on the Bryce Harper comments about Dave Dombrowski, the weekend for Tyrese Maxey, and the Sixers guys down at the NBA All-Star break. All that and more to come. Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill here on the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle City. We are streaming live on YouTube at 97.3 ESPN as well on the X platform.
You're listening to the Sports Bash with Mike Gill.
And if you're not down with that, we got 2 words for you.
On 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
Hey man, thanks for coming so fast. I couldn't get anyone else to pick up.
Yeah, it's been a busy week. I'm not complaining though. Business is way up lately.
Wow, good for you. I've been trying to grow my accounting practice, but it's been pretty slow.
Yeah, I was in the same boat last year. What really helped me was checking out this site, mylocalcustomers.com.
Never heard of it.
Well, most people haven't. It gives you a look at how many people in town are searching for what you do, and it also provides a plan to help them actually find you.
Like online?
Exactly. It's eye-opening, and it only takes a couple minutes to get started.
Huh, well, you fixed my sink. Maybe you just fixed my business too.
Want to know how many people in your area are searching for your type of business? Start with a local customer analysis at mylocalcustomers.com. It's quick, it's easy, and it's free. Go to mylocalcustomers.com today.
That's mylocalcustomers.com. mylocalcustomers.com.
for Dave to come out and say those things, it's kind of wild to me still. I mean, they made the shirts for me, and I wore them, you know? So, I mean, if they're going to make them, I'm going to wear them.
Did you have a chance to talk to Dave about what he meant by what he was saying or why he did say it?
I just think that the conclusion is, you know, obviously we keep things in-house, and that's just how it, you know, how it's always been. And in that moment, it just didn't happen. And, you know, I think my locker is always open for them to come and talk to me and vice versa. So, you know, it is what it is right now.
Well, that was Bryce Harper speaking yesterday to the media. Although I don't think Bryce Harper recalls that Dave Dombrowski was not here when he first signed with the Phillies. But maybe my criticism of Bryce Harper is wrong. We'll ask Mike McGarry of the Press of Atlantic City, pressofac.com, as he joins us right now on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Mike, Bryce Harper seemed to have a lot to say. First of all, how you doing on this President's Day?
I'm doing well, Josh. And yes, Bryce Harper did have a lot to say.
So what is your take on what he had to say? Because I felt like there's a lot of, like, I don't understand where he's coming from, to be honest, because I felt like Dave Dombrowski was just honestly answering the question. We all can see that Harper did not have a elite season, but Harper seems to be taking it as, like, it should have been some personal conversation behind closed doors.
Yeah, I find it a bit strange. First of all, I'm not shocked. You know, we've all seen Michael Jordan in The Last Dance. We all know how the minds of professional athletes work, how they can take any slight, perceived or not, real or not, and turn it into motivation. So, you know, I'm not surprised by the fact that Bryce Harper says what Dave Dombrowski said back in October motivates him. I just find it a little strange that Bryce says, we keep things in-house. Well, Bryce has never been shy about expressing his viewpoints on the Phillies. I remind you of the Sign JT campaign of 2020. And also, are we not allowed to discuss, or is nobody from the Phillies allowed to discuss Bryce Harper's performance on the field? I mean, all Dombrowski said was he didn't have the season that he normally has. And it sounds like Bryce Harper agreed with him in saying that. He didn't say Bryce Harper doesn't work hard. He didn't say Bryce Harper's a bad guy in the clubhouse. He said he just did not have an elite season. And we'll see if he can bounce back. So, I just find it strange that is a subject that can't be talked about out loud. It has to be kept behind closed doors. And finally, you know, if anybody, people just happen to make T-shirts for Bryce Harper that said not elite, and Bryce Harper just happened to wear them.
Exactly.
Happened to post a picture of him wearing the not elite T-shirt on TikTok. I mean, it just seems strange, and it just seems to me, I mean, you know, this will be gone in a day or two and will be much ado about nothing. But it just seems strange, and it's part of a strange sort of rollout to the season that the Phillies are having right now.
Yeah, and I know it's an extreme example, but I made the comment earlier, Mike, where I said, so if someone handed Bryce Harper a shirt that was like promoting like one of the people who are not one of his sponsors, right? Or if he wore, someone handed him a shirt that has like a racial slur and he's just going to wear it, like, it's just such a strange comment to make.
Yeah, I mean, look, it was planned. I mean, he just didn't show up with a not elite type of shirt and did not post and just decided to post on Facebook. That's fine. I mean, I'll go back to the Braves series in either 22 or 23 when Orlando Arcia sort of popped up about Harper in the clubhouse and in the Braves clubhouse. And then Harper stared him down after he hit a home run. And we asked Bryce after the game, did he stare down Arcia on purpose? And he said unequivocally, yes, absolutely. You know, I stared him down on purpose. I don't know why Bryce didn't come up and say, I didn't like what Dave said. Dave's the president of baseball operations. He has the right to say it. I don't need the motivation, but yeah, I'm taking this motivation, and nobody wants to be back to quote unquote elite more than me. It just seems like you know it's gone on too far. And again, to me, it's part of a strange sort of rollout to the season that the Phillies have had here in spring training. Now, will this affect them at all on March 26th when they play the Texas Rangers opening day? Not at all. This will be long forgotten.
No, it will be long forgotten. And I will mention also, Mike, that the other strangeness of this coming up is going to be the fact that some of the guys on the team are going to go to the World Baseball Classic. So you have a group of guys like Harper and others who won't even be at most of spring training. So there's another layer that's going to make this whole next several weeks as we lead up to the baseball season even more a little bit weird, right?
Yeah, I mean, Josh, I'm the wrong guy to talk about the World Baseball Classic. I have the unpopular opinion. To me, I don't like the World Baseball Classic. I don't like players leaving camp for multiple weeks to go play for, involved in this tournament. I've seen the World Baseball Classic destroy a Mets season a couple of years ago when Edwin Diaz got hurt in the World Baseball Classic. And just one thing I've noticed is everybody kind of says the World Baseball Classic is great. But then a couple of weeks into the season or a couple of months into the season, you start hearing things sort of slip out of players' mouths like, well, I didn't get a chance to really prepare the way I normally do because I was playing in the World Baseball Classic. So put me down as anti-World Baseball Classic. I think, for example, that it's absolutely ridiculous that Aaron Nola, after the season he had last year, is going to leave Phillies Spring Training and go pitch for Italy for a week or two in the World Baseball Classic. So I think that's insane. I think the entire World Baseball Classic is insane. And if I owned the team, I wouldn't let any of my players go play in it because I don't want to win the World Baseball Classic. I want to win the World Series.
Got it. Mike McGarry against World Baseball Classic.
Yeah, put me down as a no
Got
on
it.
the World Baseball Classic.
Because of Atlantic City, Mike McGarry joining us here on the Sports Bash. Josh Hennig filling for Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN. By the way, speaking of owners, does Mike McGarry have a reaction to what Steve Cohen said this last weekend about the Dodgers?
Well, and again, you saw Bryce Harper and Manny Machado yesterday come out in favor of what the Dodgers are doing. Hey, the Dodgers are playing within the rules, okay? If you don't like what the Dodgers are doing, change the rules. But right now, they are, mastering this game and playing by the rules, coloring inside the lines. So, again, my answer to anybody who talks about the Dodgers is you don't like what the Dodgers are doing, change the baseball rules. And obviously we think that's coming, after this season with labor strife and the agreement between the players and the owners up. So we'll see what that happens going forward. But as for right now, I mean, you don't like what the Dodgers are doing, change the rules or be better than them. That would be my answer to that.
Yeah, for those who didn't hear, Steve Cohen basically said that he's fine with the Dodgers spending money because he spends money too. So it was kind of one of those things where you're just like, well, at least there's one owner who's not complaining about it. But then again, it's also the guy who throws money down the toilet sometimes in Steve Cohen.
Well, the other thing to talk about the Dodgers, and Harper made this point, they have a solid core of players. And I made this point, back in October. They have players like, Kiko Garcia, the second baseman, Will Smith. They've got a core of players that came up through that Dodger system or they acquired via smart trades that are better in October than they are in July. And I think obviously the superstars have an impact. Ohtani, Freddie Freeman, Mookie Betts. But the fact that they have also managed to sign players who are better in the postseason than they are in July, to me, is just a bigger reason for their success the past two seasons as the superstars they have signed. If you look at the Philadelphia Phillies, Josh, name me one guy on that roster outside of maybe Zach Wheeler, who is better in October than he is in July.
Mike, let's flip it over to the NBA weekend because part of the highlights for the weekend was, Sixers VJ Edgecombe shining on Friday night, Tyrese Maxey being a part of the winning team in the game yesterday. Let's start with the game yesterday, Mike. Were you one of the people who walked away with positive vibe from what they did yesterday? Or do you think it's just another year with the NBA All-Star game?
Well, I thought it was an improvement. I mean, I got to tell you, I wasn't breaking down every play. I had it on in the background, was kind of flipping around as I did some things, paid attention for about 5-10 minutes at a time. I thought the format was good. I actually liked the format of teams staying on the court, teams staying off the court. I actually thought, it was kind of interesting the way they set it up. I wasn't living and dying with every basket, but it was a far better product and a big improvement over what they have put out the past few seasons. So I think they're headed in the right direction with the format they had yesterday. Again, Josh, I think all-star games, there's only so much you can do to sort of save them. Because back when I was a kid, a long time ago, 50 years ago, when the NBA All-Star came on, you just didn't see players from the Western Conference. There was no NBA League Pass. There was no 10 games on national TV every week. There was, you got to watch your local team and you got to watch one national game a week. So you didn't get a chance to see, Rick Barry play or Elvin Hayes play or Wes Unseld play or John Havlicek play that much. You saw them in the All-Star game. That sort of attraction that the game has is gone now because games are available every night. I'd rather live in this world, by the way, than the world that I lived in when I was 10 years old. I'd rather have access to every game every night. So that was a big attraction for All-Star games, and that's never going to come back. So I think that's a big problem with these games and what these games are trying to overcome these days. And to me, it's just a problem that you can't overcome. So step in the right direction yesterday, but I'm never going to be clearing the calendar for an NBA All-Star game next February.
Yeah, I don't think that it was better because of the format. I think it was better because of what Anthony Edwards said, which he says, Wemby came out assertive, and then the other guys were like, well, if he's going to play like he's trying to win the game, so are we. We're going to have to beat him at his own game. I think that's what it was more about, was the young players like Edwards and Wembayama setting the tone and, for lack of a better term, forcing the other players to keep up.
Yeah, and one thing I did like is that a lot of the older NBA players, your LeBron James, your Kevin Durant, were on one American team and the other team was much younger, basically. So I kind of like that, too. I kind of like the old American stars against the younger American stars, kind of like the new generation against the old generation. And I think there's something that they can build on there with that sort of makeup.
Absolutely. Mike, before I let you go, has Mike McGarry consumed any of the Winter Olympics?
Very, very little, Josh. This time of year is tough. I think I caught, a little giant slalom the other night for a couple of minutes, basically. Maybe last night, a little figure skating pairs for about 5 or 10 minutes. But as you know, this is a time of year, high school basketball. We've got the Cape Atlantic League tournament, Cape Atlantic League boys semifinals at Atlantic City tomorrow, Cape Atlantic League girls semifinals at Middle Township on Wednesday. The finals Saturday, noon for the boys. And 2 o'clock for the girls at Egg Harbor Township. So I'm kind of busy with following, high school basketball and college basketball and stuff like that, and just not home at night to sort of partake in the Winter Olympics. So caught it in flashes, but, I think just the thing I look at is with most Olympic winter sports is you kind of look at the television and you say, boy, that's interesting. They're cross-country skiing and they're shooting guns. That's interesting, but I don't really know what's going on. So I'll watch it for 5-10 minutes and then move on.
Robert Duvall passed away. Does Mike McGarry have a favorite Robert Duvall movie?
Wow. There's only one answer to that, and that is Tom Heyman, The Godfather, consigliere of The Godfather. So the correct answer to that is Godfather 1, one of the great scenes of all time when Robert Duvall as Tom Heyman goes out to Hollywood to talk to the producer. The producer wakes up with a horse's head in the bed, drenched in blood. So, yes, Godfather 1 would be my ultimate Robert Duvall movie.
That obviously is a legendary movie, period. I would honestly go. Did you ever see the movie The Judge?
I have not seen the movie The Judge.
So really quick, I don't want to give away the full movie. Basically, the premise of the movie is there's a lawyer who gets a big case, and it happens to be the judge is his estranged father. Robert Duvall
I
plays the
have
judge.
seen this movie, Josh. I have seen it. As soon as you said the plot there, in fact, Duvall is the judge, correct?
Yes. Yep.
And who's the son? Who's the son? Who's the lawyer?
Robert Downey Jr.
There you go.
See, that to me, that's one of those movies where you get two actors who really are, digging into their chops. You know what I mean?
Right, absolutely, and Godfather 1 outstanding, and Tom Heyman also great in Godfather 2.
Godfather 2, right?
Basically, so you're right in a way that you kind of got to put Godfather 1 and 2 kind of in their own sort of class, basically, and then maybe you can look at another Duvall movie from there. The Judge is obviously a good one.
Mike McGarry, Press of Atlantic City, AC Press McGarry on the X platform. He will back with us on Wednesday here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Mike, great stuff today.
Oh, great stuff, Josh. Hey, who needs Gill? Not me or you. So see you down the road.
Mike McGarry here. Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill. Yes, on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Sea Isle City, streaming live on YouTube and X at 97.3 ESPN. We'll get back to the Whitehorse RV text board next. Keep your text coming in. Your Mount Rushmore. If you got a favorite Robert Duvall movie, you can throw that into the conversation as well on the Whitehorse RV text board. 609-403-0973. It's President's Day, and this is the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN.
Get some apple on Mitsubishi.
Why buy used when you can drive a new Matte Black Mitsubishi?
97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
Wrapping up at 2 o'clock hour, the Sports Bash. Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN. Coming up on the side, we'll get more into the Phillies. Geoff Kerr will join us to dig deeper into those Phillies. We got to get some perspective on. There's more going on with the Phillies than just Bryce Harper talking. But we do get text. This as Robert Duvall going in 60 seconds. I like going in 60 seconds. The problem is when I think of going in 60 seconds, I think of Nick Cage, Angelina Jolie, William Lee Scott, like Robert Duvall, Will Patton. Duvall's is it Duvall's son, James, in that movie too? I feel like that's a huge, huge cast just to isolate it to Duvall. Keep your text coming in about your Phillies Mount Rushmores on the White Horse RV text board at 609-403-0973. Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill here on the Sports Bash, 3 o'clock hour of the Bash being brought to you by Broadlease. Plumbing, heating, and air conditioning. Broadlease is your trusted source for heating and plumbing service and installation for generations. Call them at 609-390-3907. Visit them online at broadlease.net. By the way, I love how there's nothing like the 97.3 ESPN audience. I sit here and ask for texts originally about your Mount Rushmore for President's Day. Not presidents, obviously, of sports athletes. I make one comment about Robert Duvall passing away, and I've already gotten multiple texts with people saying who their favorite Robert Duvall movie is. Gotta love this stuff. We will get back to the Phillies, maybe Robert Duvall as well. I always wondered if Geoff Kerr a big movie guy or not, because Mike Gill's not a big movie guy, Geoff. So we don't usually get into movie topics when Mike Gill is here, but I'm filling in for Mike, and we're mentioning Robert Duvall passed away today on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. By the way, Geoff covering the Phillies for us with 97.3 ESPN now. Joins us each week on the Sports Bash, as it's been a busy weekend for the Phillies. First, Geoff, welcome in. How you doing today?
Pretty good, Josh. By the way, here's a Robert Duvall fun fact trivia for you. Who does Robert Duvall play in To Kill a Mockingbird?
It's a good question. I don't remember the cast extremely well. It's probably one of those things I need to go back and watch.
Yeah, he's Boo Radley.
Okay.
Yeah, he plays at the very end. I don't even think he speaks in that. I don't remember. It's been a while since I've seen the movie.
Yeah, you and me both. No, we've gotten people texting in about, The Godfather, Godfather 2, Gone in 60 Seconds. We got somebody who texted in Killer Elite. So we got some good jumps. So I went with The Judge personally. I thought The Judge was a very, very good, gritty, kind of like, emotional, kind of like, diving into like the relationship between an estranged father and son. So some Robert Duvall, legend there. So.
Yeah, he's in Days of Thunder, too.
Yes, he is. Someone texted that in as well. He's Harry, the old pit crew boss.
Yep. Yeah, he's in everything. If you think of a great movie, Robert Duvall is probably in it.
He probably was. And if he wasn't in it, it probably wasn't as good.
That's a good point. I like that.
Well, we can get into, Geoff. Let's start with this, because somebody who is in a lot of the conversation right now, Bryce Harper, spoke to the media yesterday, and we played the audio in the first hour so people could actually hear what he said. I think hearing his tone, Geoff, says a lot about what he said. It really does seem like that this is a guy who took maybe a little too seriously what Dave Dombrowski said back in October. What was your takeaway from what Bryce Harper said to the media yesterday?
So I honestly kind of like how Bryce Harper is taking this personally. I thought he would. And maybe it was that self-motivating tactic by Dave Dombrowski to get that extra juice out of Harper heading into his age 33 season. Look, I thought Harper made it clear when he had the Not Elite t-shirt. I don't buy the whole, someone gave me a t-shirt and I wore it. No, there's always subliminal messaging when you're wearing a Not Elite t-shirt a couple months after someone basically says you're not elite. But in fairness to Dombrowski, he did compare Harper to Freddie Freeman too, and he mentioned how Freddie Freeman had basically a second career in his 30s. So whatever way to get this guy motivated, I don't think Bryce Harper needs that much motivation, but you can tell it's going to bother him all season.
Yeah, the t-shirt comment I thought was the dumbest thing of all, because he's like, they handed me a t-shirt I wore. It's like, hey, Bryce, if one of your, the competitors of your sponsors handed you a t-shirt, are you going to wear it? Of course not. It's just such a silly thing to say.
Yeah, exactly. For example, if you're a Miller guy and you're sponsoring Miller and Bud Anheuser-Busch comes, here's a t-shirt. It says Budweiser on it, right?
Right.
I don't know. Yeah, to me, it's point was made there. And look, I don't mind people asking Bryce Harper about it. He hasn't spoken since the end of the season, since literally game 4. So, yeah, hopefully this is all in the past now, and he can focus on the World Baseball Classic, have a good World Baseball Classic there, and kind of send the message to his GM, hey, you know what? I'm still here. I'm still really good. I still deserve this money in year 8 of this contract. But I guarantee you, if Bryce Harper has a big year, he'll be one to bring up the contract extension again.
Well, with that being said, Geoff, the other guy who spoke over the weekend, kind of got buried in the weekend, was Kyle Schwarber. The whole Nick Castellanos being in the past. Schwarber, he didn't seem too interested in talking about Nick Castellanos anymore. And it feels like that there's a lot of guys in that locker room, Geoff, who, again, reading body language, listening to how they say stuff. It seems like to me that, maybe some of these guys are glad that the Nick Castellanos era is over.
It's weird with Schwarber because I've talked to Schwarber a ton, and he always gives you a thought-provoking answer, even if he is caught out of left field with the question. He always knows how to kind of give you a good answer for a good story, right? Especially when you talk about his success against left-handed pitching or adjustments he's making to his swing. But you have to know that Nick Castellanos' question is coming, right? And the answer he gave was it was almost like, yeah, he's not here anymore. That's about it.
It just makes you wonder about, the Matt Gelb story in The Athletic about, all the people who he spoke to. It's like now you're hearing the players come out and you're kind of getting the vibe that, maybe Castellanos was a problem holding them back last year.
Yeah, look, I talked to a lot of the younger players on the team. I think they in general like Nick. I thought Nick always gravitated himself toward the younger players more. He was the first guy to console a Ryan Kerkering, right? Whatever your opinion is of Nick Castellanos, that's a genuine moment. Or, I know he went out of his way to help out Otto Kemp last year. That was a big thing. I think he wanted to make Otto Kemp feel welcome when he came up. And I think that's one of the good things he did. But it's kind of hard to do that with someone who's at your same skill level, no?
Exactly. And I think that kind of goes back to the whole assertion that, Castellanos wanted to be treated like a star, and he realized he wasn't even one of the 5 best players on the team. So, but now we replaced him, right? Now we replaced him. Geoff Kerr joining us here on the Sports Badge. Ask Geoff Kerr, PHL on the X platform. Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill here on a Monday edition of the Sports Bash. Adolis Garcia, gun show and all, showing up at training camp. But what is your take on the Adolis Garcia era here?
I don't think he could be any worse than Nick Castellanos. Look, Nick was bad. I actually did an article for my Substack today. Out of 122 hitters that had 50 plus at bats that bad cleanup last year, Nick Castellanos was 109th in OPS. Now, Adolis Garcia wasn't too much higher, but you factor in his defense. He wasn't the worst defensive outfielder in baseball last year. He's actually a Gold Glove caliber defender. And he's got more power than Nick Castellanos, so you have to think right away, you've improved. Look, I always think that's been the problem with Nick Castellanos. And again, this isn't Nick's fault at all. I think too many people had a different perception of Nick Castellanos than what he actually was.
Listen, it's a very fair point, and I think that now that we replaced him literally in the lineup, now you have a guy who I think the best part about Garcia, Geoff, is that he's got a higher upside. He's a guy who has a ton of potential. Yeah, he had a down year, but I go back to this. You saw what the Phillies did, Geoff, with Brandon Marsh. He was a guy with the Angels who is considered almost like a failed prospect. The Phillies get him. They turn him into a productive hitter. Garcia was a World Series champion clutch hitter in the postseason a couple of years ago. He's way more of a talent than Brandon Marsh. Can you imagine what the Phillies can do with him is my thinking.
This was a guy that they tried to trade for at the deadline 2 years ago. They ended up getting Austin Hayes, but they were interested in him, and they liked his bat. They liked the fact that, this guy could hit 35, 40 home runs at Citizens Bank Park. If you go on Baseball Savant, you can look this up, by the way. That's what he was projected, and they thought he'd be a good fit to a team that ended up winning 95 games that season. They did battle in the playoffs, but they were looking for some right-handed pop. I think this is what they needed, and you got to give Kevin Long and this hitting staff the benefit of the doubt that they can fix him, because they have done it with Brandon Marsh. They have done it with Kyle Schwarber. In a way, they kind of did it with Alec Bohm for a little bit. Remember Alec Bohm was really struggling as a baseball player until, he said, I bleep and hate this place. So then he became okay. I like the Adolis Garcia signing. I thought they signed him too early, though. I thought they jumped the gun. Maybe they know more than I did about it. Maybe there was a market for him. But it seemed like when they signed him for a 1-year, $10 million deal, I liked the deal. And then you're like, okay, why aren't they getting rid of Nick Castellanos yet? Like, what are they waiting for? So that's what made that whole scenario pretty interesting.
Geoff, speaking of the lineup as a whole, I know you wrote about in your Substack about the lineup, and I think one of the things that's interesting about the lineup is what Rob Thompson said, which is basically the top three is going to be the same. Some order it's going to be Turner, Harper, Schwarber, and they're going with the idea that, hey, we want these guys batting in the first inning, want them to get the most at bats. It makes a lot of sense, but I'll ask you, what is the right configuration of those three, Geoff Kerr?
I'm willing to give the Turner, Harper, Schwarber thing a shot, because I think Schwarber can bat third. Schwarber can bat anywhere in the lineup. Let's be real here. They can bat him lead off. They can bat him. He batted second last year. He hits 56 home runs. So I like Turner at leadoff. I think I do Harper too. Alec Bohm hit 299 as a 3-hitter last year. I wouldn't have been opposed to it. They put Bohm third and put Schwarber fourth, but I think they want Harper, Schwarber, or a combination of that batting in the first inning. Look, here's the problem with Turner, Harper, Schwarber. Who bats fourth? Right. I think that's the real question.
My answer to it, and it might not be a popular one, is I want Garcia for it, because I feel like he's the biggest threat. Bohm, I feel like Bohm, I don't know what he is at this point. I feel like he's a guy who's playing for a free agent contract, and you're kind of hoping that he's going to go out there and have like this, a good year, but they don't hit free agency. So it's like, are you going to leverage his desire to get a new contract as part of the lineup, or are you going to put the best guy at a certain spot in the lineup?
I would agree with you. So if let's do a hypothetical lineup here. Say Garcia's fourth. Against Rays, when you put Marsh fifth and then move Bohm to sixth, don't you think he'd be more productive at sixth?
I think it would be a good move, because I think Bohm's an RBI guy, and if you're hoping that Marsh is going to get on base, who better to drive him in, right?
Yeah, I thought, and someone pointed this out to me on X today, and it's a very good point. Remember in like 07, 08, 09 with this team, I know we're going back almost 20 years now, but how Charlie Magler used to stretch the lineup, like Jason Worth batted second. Pat Burrell batted fifth. Shane Victorino batted sixth, and it was a way to kind of stretch the lineup out. So why don't you try doing that instead of putting all your heavy hitters up top, and then you don't have that strength in the middle there? Like, I would like this team if JT Realmuto batted seventh or Alec Bohm batted sixth, just so you can get, is it a great lineup? No, but you're going to have good players probably hitting where they should at this stage in their career.
Geoff Kerr joining us. Of course, you can follow him on X at Geoff Kerr PHL, covering the Phillies for us with 97.3 ESPN this year, joining the Sports Bash each and every week. Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill on a Monday edition of the Bash. I think the guy that I'm most excited about, though, in this lineup, Geoff, I want Justin Crawford hitting ninth because I want Crawford ahead of whoever's at the top of the lineup because I think what he's going to bring to the table is going to be something we haven't seen in Philadelphia in a long time.
Yeah, I think Justin Crawford is kind of the perfect bat for this offense right now, right? You're not worried about power with him. You're worried about a guy who can get on base. And look, he's hit 300 at every level in the minors. I think it's fair to expect that he can hit 300 in the majors early in his career. It may not be this year. I think this year's going to be an adjustment point, but you got a guy who plays above average defense, probably a better left fielder than he is a center fielder, but he's going to be center field. But if you're just looking at the bat, the guy's a high on base percentage. He hits lefties. His slugging percentage is in the 800s, which is incredible considering his lack of power, but he's the gap hitter. And I think his power will develop in time. Oh, and he can steal a lot of bases for you. That is what you want out of an 8 or 9 hitter in any major league lineup, and he's going to provide that for you. It's almost like when his cousin came up, right? You thought this is what you were going to get with J.P. Crawford, and you ended up getting more power. He did it in Seattle. He didn't get a chance to do it here, but Justin, to me, is he the sexiest prospect? No, but he's a good player, and I think fans are going to see that this year.
I like the fact that he worked out this offseason with Eric Davis. The fact that he went and worked out with a real center fielder, and it's like, Justin's like, hey, Dad, I know you're a 4-time All-Star, but you weren't a great center fielder. I need to go find a bona fide center fielder to work with. Hey, Eric Davis, you won multiple Gold Gloves. You're a World Series champion. You teach me how to do it. I like that mentality with Justin Crawford.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, Josh, as someone who's covered Justin Crawford over the last couple of years, the guy's as professional as they come. You can tell he's come from a lineage of major league players, whether it's his dad or his cousin or people who his dad knows. He just carries himself very professionally. And, he doesn't think he's bigger than anybody else or anything. He's happy to be in the moment. I think he's been waiting for this time for quite a while now. And like I've told people, he's earned this job.
Geoff, I know another guy that you've seen a lot of over the last year has been talked about a lot in camp is Andrew Painter. Of course, last year was a rocky year for him in the minor leagues coming off of Tommy John surgery. But according to all reports, the team feels like he is back to being Andrew Painter. So what then is a realistic, for the fans out there who have heard so much about this guy, right, Geoff? I mean, we've heard people compare him saying that he is to the Phillies what Paul Skeens is to the Pirates, right? People have put this guy on a pedestal. Jose Lazaro was on MLB Network saying that he's one of the best talents he's ever seen. And it's this guy's got a lot of praise, a lot of expectations. So what is a realistic for Philly fans to look at this young man?
I think this year it's just he stays healthy, gets that command back on his fastball, and if he's what everybody thinks he's going to be, your back half of the rotation is going to be really good. There's a reason why you kind of let Ranger Suarez walk, which he was never coming back anyway, and it wasn't even because of Andrew Painter. It's just because they couldn't afford him and it was time to move on. But look, 3 years ago, the hype with Andrew Painter, that's the hype that Ethan Miller is getting right now. If Andrew Painter is this 1A that they think he's going to be, man, the Phillies are going to be really good this year. I just hope he could be a solid number 3, solid number 4, just kind of learn on the fly and be strong in the second half of the year. But they always say after the second year, returning from Tommy John surgery, if the command is there on the fastball, that's what takes the longest time to get back. If it's there, because his breaking pitches, they got hitters out in AAA. He was able to locate his fastball at times in AAA. It just wasn't consistently. If he could do that, if he could build his innings up, and look, the Phillies will probably monitor him a little bit, but he could be something. And look, I really like the guy's potential. He's 6'7", and remember, he's not even 23 yet.
And I think the other side of the coin with that conversation is the guy on the other end of the rotation, right? On one hand, we're talking about Andrew Painter. The other story is Zach Wheeler. He threw from 120 feet today. He hasn't thrown from a mound yet, but he is making progress. Rob Thompson and Dave Dombrowski kind of both put it out there. They're not pressuring him to come back, which, thank God, because we don't need to pressure that guy to come back, right? But still, I've heard a lot of estimates, Geoff, from mid-April to June 1st for his return. Is it just better for the Phillies to plan as if Wheeler won't be back anytime soon and then just kind of let it happen? Because I feel like that's the way they should go about this.
I feel like May 1st is more realistic than anything else, right? Like, I've heard he's a couple weeks back of what he normally would be, and that's fine. Look, I'm not willing to rush Zach Wheeler back anytime soon. He's not going to be back. He's not going to be back by opening day. I'm curious to see, though, like, how they're going to do this rotation. Is it going to be Andrew Painter and Taijuan Walker, and Walker just fills in for about a couple starts, and then they go back to Zach Wheeler? Or what if Walker pitches well? Then that gives Zach Wheeler more time. I still think they need starting pitching depth somewhere. Aaron Savali would have been a great player to get, but he signed for $6 million. It's probably a little too rich for them. Maybe they bring back Walker Buehler and find a way to get him in this, not use the six-man rotation per se, but to have someone that's available, because they don't have the starting pitching depth in Lehigh right now either.
No, they don't, and I think that's where maybe Dombrowski. I don't want to speak for him, but he kind of gave the idea that, hey, maybe we'll make a trade somewhere in March and like add another body or another arm. I know there's still guys out there free agency, but Geoff, you just made up a great point. How about the fact they want to spend a lot of money? They have kind of gone out of their way to be like, hey, like people like me thought that, well, if you had the money to spend on Bo Bichette, you have money left over. Whereas the Phillies are being like, yeah, but we just want to spend the money on that guy, not just on a guy.
Yeah, on a player that we think is worth it. Yeah, like you said, like last year, you spent money to spend money. That's how you signed Joe Ross for $4 million, and then he's gone.
Right.
So you don't want that either,
No.
Yeah, I mean, look, Jordan Romano and Joe Ross were terrible for this team last year, and they weren't around come the postseason. That's not what you want, and I think that's where they're being cautious. It seems like if it's the right fit or the right player, they're going to do it.
Geoff, I got to tell you, I was at a local brewery down here for the game that Romano gave up. It was, the 8 runs or 10 runs in the inning?
Oh, yeah.
And I remember sitting there with people, and they kept turning to me being like, are they going to take this guy out? Like, why is he still in the game? Because remember, he came in for Luzardo, and you were like, wow, they could have kept Luzardo in there. And, they just let Romano get, destroyed. And I'm just sitting there thinking, what is going on here? Someone hand me another drink to watch the rest of this inning.
I felt so bad for him, too, because, the guy was legit trying. It wasn't happening for him.
Nope.
His May ERA was 2.37, and after the Phillies put him on the IL the rest of the year, you're just like, how did he have a good May?
It's so ridiculous.
He might be there. I think he had the highest ERA ever for a reliever in this franchise.
Jose Mesa had that 1 year where he was pretty bad.
Yeah. Well, remember Mesa was kind of an all-star the 2 years. He didn't make the all-star game, but I think he was pretty close. He had back-to-back 40 season saves. And if they would have gotten that version of Jose Mesa in 2003, they would have made the playoffs.
Exactly. No, instead he imploded in 2003.
Yeah. And then remember they traded for Mike Williams and he was just as bad?
Oh, that thing. And remember the Andy Ashby trade?
Oh, that was terrible. Did he start opening day that year because Schilling
was
hurt?
I think it was 2002 or something like that.
Oh, or was it 2000? What was it 2000 the year they signed a bunch of players? They trade for it.
I gotta look it up because I remember Ashby did pitch opening day, and you were like, "Oh, he was so good for the Padres." Then it just was a fail.
And then who else?
It was 2000.
Yeah, they signed Mike Jackson that year too.
Oh, that failure too. That was an abomination fail.
That 99 year, I used to tell people that my first year really remembering the Phillies is 95. 93 I remember, but I was 5. But 99 I remember they were hot. They were 10 games over 500. They were on the verge of play, and then they lost 19-20. And I think it was the first time I ever asked for a coach to be fired. I'm like, all right, get rid of Terry Francona. He can't wear the storm.
Yeah, it was 2000 was the Ashby year. That was the year they just couldn't get out of their way.
They were terrible that year. And then 01, they kind of regressed back to the mean, but they needed that's where I actually thought the manager helped that team when Boa came in.
Yeah, they started that year, the first half of the 2000 year, they went 39-47, but that's not even the big number, Geoff. They were outscored by 50 runs in the first half of the year.
How were they only 8 under 5? I don't remember that I remember how bad they were.
The second half, they were 26-50. They got worse.
That's what I remember. Yeah. And then remember in 01, they were 20 over 500 in June. They were
they
played out of their minds that year.
They finished 0-1, 86 and 76.
Yeah.
The month of May they were 20-8.
Do you remember that year they traded for Turk Wendell and Dennis Cook, and they were both bad?
Yes, they were both bad. Yeah.
Bruce Chen was bad, so they had to trade him. And like, not like you thought Bruce Chen was good or anything. Man, that pitching staff was incredible. Yeah, Robert Purcell, Bruce Chen. I think Padilla. Now I remember I saw Nelson Figueroa's first career start at the Vet, and they swept the Marlins in a 5-game series. It was really hot that day. That's what I remember about that day.
I remember Person, I think the opening day starter, either 0-1 or 0-2. That was weird.
Yeah. Well, remember the game where he hit like 2 home runs?
Yes, I do. Yeah. It was boiling hot that day too.
Yeah, I still blame Mike Lieberthal tearing his ACL for that year because I think they were red hot when Lieberthal tore his ACL. I think it was out in L.A., and Johnny Estrada, they had to pull up really fit because I think Estrada was either in AA or he just got to AAA, and they basically said, we're going to ride with Johnny Estrada, who ended up being like a solid MLB player, but that's asking a lot for basically a minor league catcher to come up, even though he was a prospect, and say, oh, by the way, we're in first place. You got to hold on to it.
Right. Good luck, kid. We're all counting on you.
Yeah. Travis Lee was like borderline all-star that year. It was a weird year, but it was a fun year.
It was a very weird year. Speaking of the past, Geoff, before I let you go, I've been asking people throughout the day. I figured I'd throw this to you. So it's President's Day. So I said, we are going to compile a Mount Rushmore of Philly sports. You got to pick one from every team. Phillies, Eagles, Sixers, Flyers. I'm compiling all the answers at the end of the show. I'll make a poll where people can vote on throughout the week. We'll have an official Mount Rushmore by the end of the week. So does Jeff Kerr have a Mount Rushmore of Philly sports?
So you're doing all time for each franchise, right?
Yes.
So Phillies is easy. I think I go Schmidt. He should win that one.
That's pretty much a consensus.
Yeah. Eagles is a lot tougher because football is just different. I still say Chuck Bednarik's one of the greatest Eagles of all time. So I'll go with him.
Okay.
Sixers, Wilt. You're Will or Dr. J?
Which one? Gotta pick one.
Yeah, I gotta think about this. Because Wilt was a Warrior more than a Sixer. I'll go Dr. J for them. And the Flyers, I'll go Bobby Clark.
All right. Yeah, we've got some interesting answers. We got Bednarik, some people. Some people said Reggie White. Some people have said B-Doc.
Yeah, I don't mind them going them. Like, Reggie White was tremendous in Philly. B-Doc's a legend. Like, I mean, I'm surprised. I should have went Steve Van Buren, too, because he was the... I mean, look, he was the NFL's all-time leading rusher when he retired.
He was.
And won 2 championships here. So, I mean, if you want to really go back...
I mean, to me, I think some of it also is generational, right? Because, like, you got some people who will be like, they look at Allen Iverson as, like, the all-time Sixer. Or some people were like, I wasn't alive to see Bobby Clark, but I was alive to see Eric Lindros or Ron Hextall, right? So, for some people, I think it's also about, like, what is your age range? What did you grow up watching,
It's so weird, too. Like, all Joel Embiid, like, if he makes one finals, I believe his trajectory changes in this city immensely. Because if you look at the guy's career and just don't put the name up, like on the basketball reference page, you're like, who is that? Oh, that's Joel Embiid, the guy you think stinks.
Jeff, I've said it 100 times. To me, Joel Embiid is the modern-day Bill Walton. If you get him healthy for 1 year, you win a championship. Otherwise, you can't stay healthy. That was Bill Walton in Portland.
Yeah, exactly. And every year in the playoffs, he's hurt. Like, you hope that he's healthy one time. And that's why I like to tell Knicks fans this. I know that Knicks beat the Sixers, and Knicks fans are very obnoxious, but I like to tell them, I said, Joel Embiid doesn't re-injure that knee. You guys probably lose that series because the Sixers were dominating. I know it was only one game, but the Sixers were dominating that first. And then be that dominant series in that, and he could barely walk.
Yeah, and by the way, you could have also won the series if Tobias Harris would have done his job.
What was that? Remember, I think it was, what was it, Game 6? Did he even score in that game?
Nope. Didn't score at all.
He was a guy that I always liked Tobias Harris before he came here. And then he was here for 20 games. I'm like, I would not give this guy money. And they gave him money.
Yeah, that's a conversation for a 30 for 30 documentary. That's for sure.
Yeah. The whole Jimmy Butler, Ben Simmons, Tobias Harris thing is, I mean, Jimmy Butler's probably that one guy that really, I think, changed a lot of Sixers fans' opinion on the team.
Yeah. He's Jeff Kerr at Jeff Kerr PHL on the X platform. Jeff, plug the Substack and all your stuff.
Sure. So my Substack is jeffdkerr.substack.com. It's free. Anybody can read all my articles. I'll put out an article a day. You'll see me in a couple podcasts here on 97.3 ESPN. Josh, maybe you'll join me. Earnshaw's going to join me. We'll have some fun while Gill's in Egypt.
I'm around, man. You know where to find me.
All right. Sounds good. I'll text you. You're here in the studio or you're working. You're always working.
I'm working. That's one thing you and I have in common, Geoff. We're always working.
Yeah, that is true.
Geoff, take care. We'll talk soon.
Yeah, see you, Josh.
Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. And yes, 3 o'clock hour of the Sports Bash being brought to you by Broadleys Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning. Broadleys is your trusted source for heating and plumbing service and installation for generations. Call them at 609-390-3907 or visit them online at broadleys.net. Still to come, we'll get back to the Whitehorse RV text board at 609-403-0973. Don't forget, we are taking your Mount Rushmore votes. Who are your Phillies, Eagles, Sixers, Flyers, Mount Rushmore choices, as well as your thoughts on Bryce Harper's comments? Nick Castellanos no longer here. Tyrese Maxey, VJ Edgecombe, they shined this weekend at the NBA All-Star break. And still to come, we have football at 4 with Jeff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast and Philly Voice joining us, as well as Knicks Nuggets at 4:30. And our unsportsmanlike moment of the day. Someone had to take this morning on unsportsmanlike, and knowing me, if you know me, you know I had the comment on this take from Courtney Cronin. All that and more still to come on the Sports Bash. Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle City. And we are streaming live on YouTube and X at 97.3 ESPN.
You're listening to the Sports Bash with Mike Gill.
Never thought this radio stunt would catch on so big.
On 97.3 ESPN.
The 2026 Air Force Reserve MAC Basketball Championships are returning to Atlantic City's iconic Jim Whalen Boardwalk Hall for the 7th consecutive year. March 5th through 10th, featuring the conference's top 10 men's and women's teams. The tournament is fun for the family, featuring a band jam, Spirit Squad showcase, and mascot game. Don't miss your chance to be a part of the action, to see who will cut down the nets and earn a spot in the big dance. Visit maxsports.com/basketball for more info and to purchase tickets.
You've got a big day, So you use Unstoppable scent boosters to give your laundry non-stop freshness. So no matter how long the day goes, you
can't stop this power, this walk, this pose, this strut, this look, this talk.
Your clothes will be so fresh you can confidently strut into that end of the day meeting like a
bosses. Let's talk business in my office.
Add new Unstoppable beads to your wash for 24-hour non-stop freshness so you can smell unstoppable.
Allstate is New Jersey's trusted auto insurer, protecting cars across the state, from the shore to the city. We're by your side when you need us most, providing you with affordable auto coverage you can rely on. So switch to Allstate today, and you could save an average of $713 on auto insurance. You're in good hands with Allstate. Based on the national average annual savings for new customers surveyed in 2024, savings vary, subject to terms and availability.
You're listening to the Sports Bash with Mike Gill.
When I'm driving, I got a guy on the radio who talks to me. I can't see him, but he talks to me.
On 97.3 ESPN.
Josh Hennig back here on the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN. Check back in the Whitehorse RV text board at 609-403-0973. Whitehorse RV Center in Williamstown and Galloway. Your RV adventure starts here at Whitehorse RV. Got a bunch of texts coming in throughout the hour here at 609-403-0973. Keep your votes for Mount Rushmore. President's Day. Who are your Philly sports Mount Rushmore picks? We will compile all the answers tonight. We will put up a poll, so then by the end of the week, we will have a 97.3 ESPN Mount Rushmore, and we will all continue to argue about it. More texts coming in at 609-403-0973. Big Al from Violent chimes in and says, Reggie White is the best defensive end of all time, but he went to the Packers. I mean, if you're going to go based off of the guys never playing for another team, sure. Then the picks of Schmidt, Clark, and Bednarik make sense, but Dr. J played for the Nets in the ABA, so do we hold that against him? I mean, I don't think there is a guy who is all Sixers their entire career who would even be in the conversation. Iverson got traded to the Nuggets, Wilt played for the Warriors and the Lakers. Dr. J played for the Nets, and what was it, the Virginia Squires in the ABA? So I don't know if we can use the they only played for one team. I don't think holding that against Reggie should mean anything. Chuck Bednarik's a legend, but so is Reggie. More text on the Whitehorse RV text board. Paul from Millville chiming in at 609-403-0973 says, I'm going to create a Mount Rushmore based on my lifespan, he says. These are the guys I've seen in my lifetime. He's going to go Eagles, Donovan McNabb, Sixers, Allen Iverson, Flyers, Claude Giroux, and Phillies, Chase Utley. Well, Chase Utley is like a cult figure to an entire generation. It's why he's such a central piece of the show. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. There's a famous episode where, the show makes an ongoing string where Mac's character is loves Chase Utley, always wants to meet him. He finally gets to meet him years later. It's like the most awkward conversation and meeting outside of a hotel ever. So I get the Chase Utley thing. The problem with Utley is that if we're being completely objective, he might not even been the best player on those teams, which is kind of crazy considering he's a borderline Hall of Famer. I am not a Claude Giroux fan. I think Giroux is extremely overrated. He got a lot of stats in the Flyers uniform because he played for a long time, not because he's one of the best players. To me, I would probably have gone someone else. Allen Iverson, to me, there's only 4 names that can be the Sixers Mount Rushmore guy. Iverson is one of those 4, so I'm totally fine with it. And McNabb is totally a perspective thing, Paul and Millville. I think that some people still hate McNabb. Some people love McNabb. If McNabb is the first great quarterback you saw in your lifetime, yeah, it makes sense. If you weren't alive to see Reggie or Randall, then McNabb and Brian Dawkins are probably going to be more up your alley. But I like the diversified votes from Paul and Millville, mixing it up here on the Whitehorse RV text board at 609-403-0973. We talked about Robert Duvall as well earlier in the show. Steve in Ocean City says, definitely both Godfather movies are Duvall great movies, but also is really good in Days of Thunder. Yeah, Days of Thunder, he played Harry, the pit boss, crew chief. That was a great role from him. Steve in Ocean City also says, also an old flick was Killer Elite. Yeah, Killer Elite, definitely an old but good movie. Good poll there. We had someone who mentioned about Gone in 60 Seconds for Robert Duvall. That was another mention earlier on the text board. I'm laughing because Andrew in Summers Point just threw a virtual bombshell on the Mount Rushmore conversation at 609-403-0973. That's how you get in touch with us through the Whitehorse RV text board. Andrew Summers Point says, my Mount Rushmore: Richie Ashburn, Bobby Clark, Brian Dawkins, and Ben Simmons. I'm pretty sure, Andrew Summers Point, you are the only one who will put down Ben Simmons. A little tongue-in-cheek there. I do love the Dawkins. Richie Ashburn's a great poll. People forget about that, his Hall of Fame career and his... Richie was part of that, that little Whiz Kids team back in, 1950? And then the Phillies were, never good after that the rest of his career. But he still had an amazing Hall of Fame career. So, good poll there on Richie Ashburn. Definitely made me laugh there with the Ben Simmons, Andrew Summers Point. More text coming in at 609-403-0973 on the Whitehorse RV text board. Let's see here. Jerry Navseekin says it has to be Mike Schmidt. Yeah, I think most people are going to vote for Mike Schmidt for the Mount Rushmore, Jerry, but you got to give me the other 3 as well. There's 4 people on Mount Rushmore, so you got to pick 1 from every team, Jerry. So we'll circle back to you a little bit later. More text coming in. Geoff in Ocean City says, I should be kidding about Giroux. I'm not joking about Giroux. He was a stat compiler. He was a very good player who had to play for a long time. If you're a very good player and you play for a long time, you put up big stats. Just how it works in sports. I'm not putting Drew Bledsoe in the Hall of Fame because he played long enough. Sports history is full of guys who had good numbers because they played a long time. Is Harold Baines one of the greatest hitters of all time? Well, he played long enough to get 3,000 hits. I don't think he should even be in the Hall of Fame. He should be in the Hall of Very Good, Harold Baines. To me, Claude Giroux is Hall of Very Good. You're asking me who the 4 greatest Flyers of all time, Giroux doesn't make my list. The greatest Flyers of all time, for me, and I'm not putting them in a particular order, it's Bobby Clark, Brian Propp, Ron Hextall, Eric Lindros. Giroux's not in my top 4. Sorry, he's not. More text coming in the Whitehorse RV text board at 609-403-0973. Rico chimes in. He says, Josh, great job filling in for Mike while he walks like an Egyptian. That's good. That's a good poll by you, Rico. He says, my Mount Rushmore has to be Concrete Charlie, who played both ways, put Frank Grifford into the ground with the best tackle until DeJean hit Jamar Chase and Derrick Henry. Hey, man, if putting DeJean in the same conversation as Concrete Charlie is a huge honor for DeJean, okay? Let's just put it that way. To me, it seems like for a lot of you guys out there listening, the conversation about who should be the Eagles' Mount Rushmore is really coming down to 3 people. It's Dawkins, it's Bednarik, and it's Reggie. A couple of votes coming in so far for McNabb. Someone just texted in and says Bernie Perron should be your top 4 Flyer. Probably. I would probably. Again, I'm doing this off the top of my head. I'm not doing it like I'm actually literally like thinking about it. But if you're to tell me take Hextall out, put Perron in, I'm fine with that. Bernie's a legend, an amazing human being, by the way. May he rest in peace. Bernie, I had the opportunity to talk to him a couple times off the radio, putting him on for different shows, and Bernie was always just an amazing human being. So if you're saying, you know, the big 4 for the Flyers should be Clark, Bernie, I don't know, Propp and Lindros, I'm good with that. All right, we'll get to more of your texts throughout the show. The one on the Whitehorse RV text board is 609-403-0973. Still to come, we have Football on 4 with Geoff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast and Philly Voice coming up, as well as Knicks Nuggets at 4:30. But coming up on the other side, the unsportsmanlike moment of the day. Courtney Cronin said something this morning, and I don't want to say it struck a nerve, but it definitely stood out to me. Courtney Cronin coming to the defense of one of the unsportsmanlike producers this morning. I have a very, very specific reaction to it. That's next. Josh Hennig, hanging out with you on the Sports Bash, filling for Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle City, streaming live on YouTube and X at 97.3 ESPN.
You're listening to The Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
I don't think that Pat's going to scout out locations for a potential date, because why would that not be? That's an easier thing to do. You go to a restaurant, you go to a bar. You don't go to a place that requires multiple hours to pass through exhibits. He's going because he's trying to fill time. That's what humans do. He wants mental stimulation. I cannot believe I'm agreeing with you on this, but I am absolutely backing you 100% on the fact that it has nothing to do with trying to find a romantic interest.
It's either sit on the couch and watch TV or go find a cultural thing to do.
You guys, every single day, I'm here on a whim. Every single day, you guys are bringing up his love interest and making it very clear to the world, to all of our listeners across multiple affiliates in the continental United States and in Hawaii. You're letting everybody know, Pat's single, guys. Hey, by the way, did you know Pat's single? I'm trying to back this guy up because he goes to museums, and you're trying to claim it's a front for the fact that he's lonely and doesn't have a girlfriend. I'm the one in support of him.
The sports moment of the day, Courtney Cronin going off on Sportsmanlike Crew. Evan Canty and Michelle Hurd every Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. and 10 a.m. here on 97.3 ESPN. Courtney Cronin doesn't realize what she just did. Courtney Cronin just revealed that she may not be the hero that we wanted, but she is the hero that we needed. As someone who has been single, as a single guy, most of my tenure here at 97.3 ESPN as an on-air person, and whose single status has been bantied about as fodder for the on-air personnel at times, I appreciate that Courtney Cronin came to Pat's defense this morning. And I love the fact that she was so aggressive about it. I think people don't understand sometimes how it may be a joke to some people, your relationship status, but it really is awkward at times. You really get put in a bad predicament when people keep bringing up, oh, you're the single guy. You're the one without the girlfriend. You're the one without the kids. You're the one with the wife and kids. And your entire social dynamic goes to the pits because of it. Like, you people don't realize sometimes how, like, if you're the one without the girlfriend, you're the one without the wife and the kids, you become the third wheel. You become the outsider in a lot of social environments. And Courtney Cronin is 100% right. You know, it's at one point or another funny or interesting, but when you keep driving it home and blasting it out to the public, it kind of puts a black cloud over your head. Like, why is that guy single? Oh, why don't we hang out with Josh or Pat? Well, you know, they don't have a significant other to join in. You're like, all right. Courtney Cronin, I salute you. I salute you for coming to Pat's defense and for every single guy who has ever been on a platform whose relationship status has been used against them in the landscape of media. Geoff Mosher, who is not single, joins us next on 97.3 ESPN.
The Philadelphia Eagles.
They got him again!
Sixers.
Bang! It's good! Ball game!
And Flyers.
Tipped in front of the net!
97.3 ESPN. WENJ. WENJ HD. Millville, Atlantic City. A Town Square media station serving all of South Jersey.
Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill here in a Monday edition of the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. And yes, football at 4 is always being brought to you by Ocean Casino Resort and the Fanatics Sportsbook, the place to be. Listen, we got basketball, we got hockey, we got the Olympics, baseball is around the corner. It's not just football season. The Fanatics is the place to go all sports seasons. So go to Ocean, go to the Fanatics Sportsbook, go for the win. For more information, visit theoceanac.com. As promised, joining us right now for another edition of Football at 4 on a Monday. It's a Mosher Monday. Geoff Mosher joins us right now on the Sports Bash. Josh Hennig again filling in for Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN. Geoff, welcome in. How you doing on this Monday?
I'm good, Josh. It's good to be here. You and I are not in Egypt, so that there's something about that.
There is something about that, although I think a whole another conversation can be had about Mike Gill and his traveling, but that's probably for a podcast, honestly.
Oh, I would think, yeah.
But let's get into what's going on with the NFL, because I thought a very interesting news item dropped today, which kind of changed my mentality coming into this conversation, which was, for those who didn't see, the news came down, the Dolphins are basically clearing house, Geoff. They have announced they are going to be getting rid of Tyreek Hill. They're going to get rid of Bradley Chubb at a later date, a couple other guys. How does a team like the Dolphins starting to unload guys maybe start changing the trajectory of the NFL offseason now that we're loading more names into the market, Geoff?
Yeah, Josh, and I think you're going to see quite a bit of this throughout the offseason. I think the trade market this offseason in particular will be hotter than ever. I think they're not cap casualties. It's not that, because you can pay anybody you want. You clearly, sometimes you become a casualty of scheme. Sometimes you become a casualty of just an overhaul, like what's going on in Miami. But I think with what was there, 10 new head coaches in the league. That's basically a third of the league. 60% of the offensive coordinators in the league were replaced. A ton of new defensive coordinators. So you're talking about an entire changeover over 1/3 of the league, if not more. And guys want their players. They want their schemes. They don't want holdovers unless it's someone who's just elite or fits. So I think this is just the start of what's going to be a very, very active offseason for the entire league.
And I know it's not a direct line, but it kind of made me think of it a little bit, because you guys have the latest inside the data with Sam Finkel and about the fact of the rising salary cap. And then you see a team like the Dolphins being like, we don't care. We're just going to get rid of these guys. Like, the Dolphins didn't have to get rid of them, but they just chose to. And it just goes to show you that when you do get a new coach, when you do get a new GM, how that impacts a team.
Yeah. I mean, Jeff Hafley has basically been, I believe, a 4-3 guy in Green Bay, if I'm not mistaken. And, the Dolphins have run a lot of 3-4. So naturally, even a good player like Bradley Chubb, who I think had 8.5 sacks last year, if they don't feel like he fits what they're going to do, and And again, I think trading guys is going to be at certain positions because of the availability that there's going to be this year. I don't know how easy that's going to be. And plus, like you said, there's a rise in the cap. So taking a dead hit in 2026, you can probably take a bigger dead cap hit than maybe you ordinarily want to because of how much the cap just jumped.
Geoff, and that's why I'm glad that we're talking about this, because with the Eagles, the rise of the salary cap gives Howie Roseman a lot more options. And folks can dig deeper into it with the latest inside the data with you and Sam Finkel. But, it's one of those things where I think people don't realize that, we always talk about how Howie Roseman's so good at the salary cap, right? Uh-huh. But now it's Howie Roseman's being handed flexibility with that salary cap. It kind of makes the whole who they do or don't sign this offseason a little more interesting.
Yeah, and one thing Sam's show, Inside the Data on Inside the Birds, really brought to light that was, I think, really interesting and why people should listen to it, is that the increase in the cap combined with the rollover that the Eagles have is what gives them their flexibility, but they don't have the flexibility that they would typically have with contract restructuring. All right, and Sam explains why. Everybody always says, oh, well, because they're used to it now, and I understand. Oh, well, these guys make a lot of money. Well, how we can just restructure the contract. No, that's not always the case. Not when you've got 3 or 4 guys who've continuously been restructured throughout the course of their career. It makes it a little bit difficult to keep going to that well.
Really quick, explain that a little more, because I think that the average person listening to us, whether listening to us on 97.3 ESPN or catching the replay of Football at 4, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, Geoff Mosher joining us here on a Mosher Monday. The restructure conversation that you said, people assume you can just do it again and again and again. But ultimately, at some point, it does come home to roost, right?
Yeah, I mean, you can do it with younger players who are in like their second or third extension. But, the Eagles have a couple of guys, like take a Lane Johnson, for example, who you can't, because what it entails, and again, if you listen to the pod, you'll get a better idea. But what it entails generally is taking base salary that is guaranteed and converting it into a bonus so that you can spread it out. But if you spread that money out in future years, even dummy years for players who are already over 30 or 32 or north of that, then they're less likely to be on the roster, 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road. And yet their cap hits would get bigger because you're pushing signing bonus money down the road there. It's easier to do it year one or a first or a second time contract, or even like 3 years into a first extension, because you still expect that player to be with you for at least X amount of years, so that even if you're kicking the can way down the road, you're only maybe getting 1 or 2 or 3 dummy years where the cap hit will be low as the cap goes up. But you can't do that on a guy who's like 35, give him 7 years, 5 dummy years, so that when he's 42, he still, counts against your cap.
Right, and also you can't do in the NFL what they do like in Major League Baseball, where like they give out the Bobby Bonilla or the Ohtani contracts, where it's like, yeah, well, we'll pay you when you're like 50. You can't do that in the NFL.
No, not yet. And to be honest with you, to be honest with you, it's probably going to go the other. You've heard the owners talking about, they haven't exactly said how the Eagles do business, but they've talked about the integrity of contracts and salary cap and making sure that the integrity of the cap is being maintained. And that means that they're going to start discussing at future meetings how the Eagles aren't the only one, but they're sort of the pioneer. No, they're at the forefront of it. The Saints do it, other teams do it, but not too many teams are willing to do it, because it does involve your owner being embracing taking dead cap hits on players, paying players on your cap who aren't on your team, and maybe for a couple of years, and kicking that can down the road. That's why Jeffrey Lurie is a great owner, is because he's willing to put out more cash up front than most owners in order to have the cap situation the way it is. But it sounds like, if you're just reading the tea leaves, the owners are going to start, talking about this and maybe changing how much you can do that in the future.
And you mentioned Lane Johnson earlier, and obviously we don't know for a fact what he is or isn't going to do next year, but there has been some conjecture, Geoff, by other people that for Lane to come back, the Eagles might need to pony up a little extra money as a, hey, Lane, we still love you money.
Well, I don't know about that. I think I forget what his cash number is. But he's one of the higher paid players on the team. I think his cap number is around 41 million, or that's his cash number. It's a pretty big number. So because of all the restructures, by the way, that they have done on his contract. So I'm not sure that Lane's going to get more money out of this, but we'll see. I've been fooled before.
Well, I'm pulling up over the cap right now. Let's see here for 2026. He has a base salary of 1.3, a signing bonus coming in as long as on the roster of an extra 9.9 million. His total cap number is 20.2. Although he has no guaranteed money for 2026.
Does he have an option? I haven't looked at Lane's contract.
He has a 9.1 million option.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll see what happens there.
I mean, if I'm adding it all together, that's about almost 20 million. So, in terms of, actual money, not, shuffled money.
Yeah. Without having, and Over the Cap is the best website especially for Eagles money, because the Eagles have somebody in their contract department who came from that website, I believe. But even they're not to the T.
Yeah. Well, again, I'm just going off of what it says. If it says no guaranteed money, but there's option money, then maybe there is a scenario where the Eagles could how he does his little thing. But again, as you mentioned, Geoff,
when you say no guaranteed money, you're talking about guaranteed base salary. I think that because if there was no guaranteed money at all, then they could just cut him and not be on the hook for anything. But that's not the case with Lane.
Correct. Yeah, your reading of it is correct. I can pull up the screen if you want here and put it on.
No, it's all good. But go ahead.
All right. Well, my larger point is that I think part of the reason why people are interested about the Lane Johnson, not less much because whether he does come back, but because of the fact that people are looking at the cap going up and they're assuming, hey, Howie time, right? Howie's going to do more things. But I think you and Sam have explained multiple, not just the latest episode of Inside the Data, but multiple times that it's not as simple as, hey, there's more money here, that there's a lot more nuance to this salary cap stuff.
Yeah, and they have to figure out extensions for their own in-house guys. They always consider that free agency. You always hear Howie say, people think we're not active in a given year on free agency, but we think we are if we gave somebody an extension like to Jalen Carter or Jordan Davis, right? Or if they bring back Reed Blankenship, because if they don't do those extensions, those guys get closer to free agency and maybe can walk like Milton Williams. So they always consider that their version of free agency, in-house free agency.
Let's see if I can do some magic here by myself here in the studio. There we go. So there is your screen there. So it's guaranteed salary, Geoff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and obviously, so those option bonuses are there, and you'd have to know when they kick in and when they don't. But there's a reason why, and you can see how it's been spread out through a couple of dummy years. Yeah,
more than a couple. But
yes.
Like you said, though, they're not going to be paying him at 42, 43 years old. There's a reason why, they're going to probably come back around and do something with it.
Yeah, I mean, you don't want to have him, on the cap for like $15 million in when he's in 2030 and then 2031 when he's not going to probably be playing. So, yeah.
Exactly. So, and which brings us to the other part of the conversation, because you just mentioned Reed Blankenship with the Eagles, Geoff. For you, of the guys who are the free agents, the Blankenships, the Nakobe Deans, the Jalen Phillips, is there a guy that you, Geoff Mosher, think they need to prioritize of the defensive group to bring back?
Oh, yeah. I mean, Jalen Phillips, for sure, because they traded a third-round pick for him, played fairly well. He still, this year, was removed from injury the year before and the year before that, so maybe even next year he's even better because he did end the season healthy. He knows the scheme. You're not particularly deep at edge rusher right now. Under contract, let's say if Jalen Phillips is not under contract, he'll be for your free agent. So you're talking about Nolan Smith, you're talking about Jalix Hunt, and you're talking about Brandon Graham. So you're just not deep at edge right now. This is you're predicated on having a 4-man rush. Other places, Nakobe Dean's a great player, but you drafted Jahad Campbell in the first round. Reed Blankenship, really nice, been solid, won a Super Bowl, great. He's not irreplaceable. But a guy like Jalen Phillips, that's hard. That's harder to replace.
Listen, I totally hear what you're saying about Phillips, but just to play devil's advocate, is there any concern that next year when the Eagles take the field that you have Blankenship and Dean in a Cowboys uniform?
Yeah, I mean, there's always that concern that when you lose, one of your coaches to another team and it happens to be a division rival. But like, again, I don't want to overstate this. I do think Reed Blankenship's a good player. I don't want to understate this. I mean, I think Reed Blankenship's a good player. If he went to the Dallas Cowboys, does that make them automatic like Super Bowl contender? No, it's just you bring in Reed Blankenship because he knows exactly what the defense is, what the coordinator wants done. He can help everybody else. He's a good enough player where he can be a starter. But let's not make it out to be like, they're getting Ed Reed, or one of these like Brian Dawkins in his prime. So I'd be far less or far more concerned if the Cowboys got Jalen Phillips than they got Reed Blankenship, of course.
Gotcha. No, I'm just asking because of the fact that, in my mind, and a lot of fans out there, they look if it's already been at the Christian Park and went to Dallas. And then it's like if any of the Eagles guys go to Dallas too. Because remember, you had, what was it, Josh Sweat, who was the other guy who went with Gannon to Arizona, right?
Kaiser White went there.
Kaiser White, yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, it happens. It's certainly something you have to be weary of. But I think with the way the Eagles prioritize the trenches, they'll make a competitive deal to Jalen Phillips as long as somebody doesn't go, crazy. Blankenship, we'll see. It's funny, and I'm only bringing that up because I was asked in an interview on a PA radio station. The host said to me, well, they got to keep Reed Blankenship, right? I mean, you have to keep him. And I said, well, why? And I like Reed Blankenship. I'm not anti-Reed Blankenship, but I mean, if you're giving me the pecking order of things the Eagles need to do on defense, and that would include figuring out, Jalen Phillips and then getting extensions for either Carter or Davis or even Moro Jomo's up after 3 years. Like, keeping Reed Blankenship, I wouldn't put as high in the pecking order of that. And again, I'm not trying to slam the guy. I think he's done an excellent job, but I don't see him as an irreplaceable part of the Eagles defense.
Well, I think the other reason why Jalen Phillips is important is because, and I'm not trying to throw shade at anyone, but I'm just being realistic. I don't know what Nolan Smith is going to be moving forward.
Yeah.
I don't know if that guy is going to continue to ascend or if he already hit his ceiling. I think J.L.X. Hunt is continuing to ascend, but
yes.
I don't know if Nolan Smith is, and I think that's a huge problem for the Eagles after a guy they invested a first-round draft pick in, and he may be limited, and now at least in Jalen Phillips you have a guy who has a high ceiling. Nolan Phillips, I don't know what his ceiling is anymore, Geoff.
Right, and that's another thing financially with what you're talking about with Nolan Smith. You're not. Yeah. He's probably not going to get an extension. I can't see that happening. However, it is after year 3, so you have to decide on the 5th-year option. You are going to pick up his 5th-year option. There's no question about that. But that does lock you into a certain amount of money coming up. So again, like that's why you're trying to figure out what's the best allocation of your money, and it's going to be and also knowing that at this time next year, Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell are going to need their contracts done. So you can't pay everybody.
No, you can't pay everybody. You got to make some difficult decisions here. I think that's the biggest reason why Nakobe Dean, for as much as we all love him, won't be back. Because, like you said, they drafted Jahad Campbell. And at some point, you mentioned that there's a laundry list of guys who have to get paid at some point.
That's
and you can't just keep drafting guys again and again and hoping for the best. Like, I mean, for as much as credit we give Harry Roseman for getting Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, etc., he's not going to hit on every single pick every single year. The odds are against it happening. So you can't just infinitely keep replacing guys.
That's right. I mean, part of being an organization that drafts and develops, like the Eagles have done a pretty good job of it. I'll say they had some real rough stretches, late Andy Reid years and then through the Chip Kelly and Doug Peterson years, both in missing on draft picks and then just not developing good players who went elsewhere and played better. But they've done a much better job. But the part of that mindset is that you're going to lose some good players who are going to get paid elsewhere and be able to replace them. That's something that, the Steelers deal with, the Ravens deal with it, the Packers deal with it. It happens. That's part of being a draft and develop club.
Jeff, before we let you go, because we know that Jeff P and P Mosher stands for Philadelphia. I'm just kidding.
Oh yeah.
Obviously. So we've been asking today throughout the show. I want to get your perspective because you've been around the Philadelphia sports scene for a long time now.
Mm-hmm.
So today's President's Day, so I figured let's do a Mount Rushmore of the Philly sports, but you have to pick one player from every team. Okay, you can't double up on a team, so you can't be like Mike Schmidt and Richie Ashburn. No, you got to pick one Philly, one Eagle, Sixer, Flyer. I'm compiling all the answers at the end of the show. I'm going to put a poll together to make an official 97.3 Mount Rushmore list by the end of the week. So does Jeff Mosher have a Mount Rushmore of Philadelphia sports?
I mean, I don't think I'm going to be, saying anybody who's not somewhat obvious. I mean, if we're talking Phillies, it's got to be Schmitty, right? I mean, I know you can put Carlton up there as a pitcher. He was fantastic. And I've always felt of the 2008 to 2012 team that Jimmy Rollins was the best overall and most impactful. In fact, I'm really don't understand why Chase Utley, and I like Chase Utley, I'm nothing against him, why he gets more Hall of Fame votes than Jimmy Rollins, because I feel like Rollins was the overall better player. But nonetheless, Schmitty is your Phillies Mount Rushmore guy. Let's work backwards. So your Sixers Mount Rushmore guy. That one's a little bit tougher, right? I mean, it's between
way tougher, yeah.
Iverson, Dr. J, and I mean, Moses was only here for a short time, so I don't think
you're the first person to mention Moses.
Oh, plus Barkley.
We have so far it's been Barkley.
And obviously Will Chamberlain. I'm sorry, Will Chamberlain. That's
the other one.
Yeah, it's got to be Will. It's got to be Will.
So the four we've been getting throughout the day is either Dr. J, Wilt, Iverson, or Chuck. Those are the four.
No, it's got to be Wilt. So it's got to be Wilt. It's got to be Schmitty, the best Eagle of all time. I mean, it's got to be Reggie White. If we're being honest,
I got a lot of votes for Bednarik.
Oh man, that's a little bit before my time. I tend to favor the athletes who are played in the bigger, faster, more athletic and not taking nothing away from Concrete Charlie. But fine, I won't dispute it. But that's pretty good.
We also got some votes for Dawkins, obviously.
Yeah. Flyer. Is Bobby Clark?
Got a lot of votes for Bobby Clark. Got some votes for Eric Lindros.
Bernie?
We had one idiot vote for Claude Giroux. So.
Oh, come on. No, I mean, Claude was good, very good, but not.
Jeff, I explained this earlier. I said the problem with Giroux is he was a very good player. When you're a very good player and you play long enough, you build up stats. You can be a stat compiler, and it makes your career look a lot better than it really was. It's like, was Drew Bledsoe one of the best quarterbacks of all time? No. But did he play long enough to put up some nice stats? Yes, he did.
Yes. Yeah. For a while, I don't know if it's still that. Kerry Collins, it was like top 10 in passing yards all time in the NFL. And you wouldn't say Kerry Collins. Yeah, you wouldn't put him up there with the greatest quarterbacks to ever play the game.
Yeah. It's just, people look at stats sometimes, don't look at the career and realize that, hey, this guy played for 20 years. That kind of helps.
Yeah, for sure. I'm trying to think if there's anybody that I missed. I mean,
Well, we did get one vote for Richie Ashburn instead of Mike Schmidt. So we have that.
Any votes for Dick Allen?
No votes for Dick Allen.
Huh, interesting. Okay. Well,
wait, only one vote for Bernie Perrant. So.
Okay. Well, I think Bobby Clark is the guy that, you associate with the Broad Street Bullies, right? I mean,
he's the headliner of the Broad Street Bullies.
Right.
But I mean, there are still a lot of people who might look at Bernie Perrant as maybe, one of the greatest Flyers of all time. And, the guy's a Hall of Famer.
Did you get any votes for Lindros? Did Lindros get any votes?
Got 2 votes.
Okay. That's fair. It's fair.
I think part of it's generational too. It's like if you didn't grow up watching certain people, you're inclined, right? You know what I mean? It's like, there's that like differentiation. It's like if you grew up in a certain era, it's Lindros,
right?
It's Dawkins, it's Allen Iverson. If you grew up in another era, it's Reggie, it's Dr. J, it's Bobby.
Yes,
Clark,
you see, that's the difficulty of the Mount Rushmore discussion is like, can anybody ever beat Wilt for the 76ers? I mean, he put up the most insane No, he was the greatest basketball player there ever was. And, people who watched him play would even say that Jordan really can't compare because the gulf between Wilt and whoever was the second or third best player in the NBA of his era is even wider than Jordan and whoever you want to put second or third in Jordan's era. So I can't say I wasn't old enough.
Well, we'll add your votes to the tabulation, Geoff Mosher.
All right, thank you. Have a good
Geoff,
one. Talk to you Wednesday.
That's the plan. As long as you don't have something else going on.
No, we're good. Talk to you soon.
Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle City, and as always, football at 4 powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Like, subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Brought to you by Ocean Casino Resort, the Fanatics Sportsbook, the place to be all sports seasons. Basketball, hockey, the Masters is coming in April. That big basketball tournament you might have heard of in March, yeah, that's next month. UFC fights on Saturday nights. The Fanatics Sportsbook and the Ocean Casino Resort are your place to go. So go to Ocean. Go for the win at the Fanatics Sportsbook. For more information, visit theoceanac.com. All right, Josh Hennig hanging out with you on 97.3 ESPN and filling in for Mike Gill. Coming up on the other side, another edition of Knicks Nuggets. Nick Earnshaw joins the conversation next on 97.3 ESPN.
Driving, I got a guy on the radio who talks to me. I can't see him, but he talks to me.
On 97.3 ESPN.
Matt Black Kia's President's Day prices are so low, it's likely to cause a stampede. 26 Kia Sportage, $129 per month. 25 Kia Telluride, $159 per month. Or finance with 0 down and 0 payments for 90 days.
Matt Black Kia, 6211 Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township.
It's got to be a Matt Black Kia.
24-month leases, $56.99 due at signing, plus licensing, registration, and taxes. No security deposit on approved credit through KMF. Expires month end.
As a mom, comforting my family is what I do best. Vicks Vapor Stick provides soothing, non-medicated Vicks Vapors in an easy-to-apply stick, and it dries fast, so there's no mess. I use it to comfort myself and my family.
Thanks, Mom.
Vicks Vapo Stick, soothing comfort for the whole family. And try Vicks Vapo Shower Max for steamy Vicks Vapors when you need more comfort for yourself. Use as directed.
Progressive Insurance presents the Sports Flash on 97.3 ESPN. NBA, the Sixers will return from the All-Star break Thursday night hosting the Atlanta Hawks, and it'll come before Philadelphia begins a 3-game road trip on Saturday. Sixers entered the All-Star break losing 3 of their last 4 games. Major League Baseball, the Phillies with their full squad working out in Clearwater, Florida, and they'll open up Grapefruit League play on Saturday, facing the Blue Jays in Dunedin. Philadelphia coming up a 96-win season, taking the NL East, but losing to the Dodgers in the divisional round. Winter Olympics, the United States men's hockey team defeated Germany 5-1 Sunday, getting 2 goals from Austin Matthews. They go unbeaten in group play and now will be in the quarterfinals. U.S. speed skater Jordan Stoltz won his 2nd gold medal of the games, winning the 500-meter. He'll race again Thursday in the 1,500-meter, going for gold medal number 3. The sports update brought to you by Progressive. Bundle auto and home, renters or condo, and save with Progressive. I'm Tony Desiri, and that's your Sports Flash on 97.3 ESPN.
From the Town Square, New Jersey Info and Weather Network, I'm Chief Meteorologist Dan Zarrow. Clouds, unsettled weather, and fairly mild temperatures, the highlights of the rest of the week here. Tonight we'll see partly cloudy skies as temperatures dip to around the freezing mark, low of 32 degrees. There is a slight chance of a quick shower tomorrow morning, then mostly cloudy skies, high jumps to 49. 48 on Wednesday with occasional rain showers early and late. We'll see lots of clouds on Thursday with a high around 50. Get weather 24/7 wherever you are. Download our free mobile app today.
.32 here on the Sports Bash. Josh Hennig filling for Mike Gill. 973 ESPN FM, the 973 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Sea Isle City. I can always depend on Nick Earnshaw to be prompt and ready to go to join us for a Nuggets segment, especially when he doesn't just have a lot to talk about. I don't know if we have enough time to get to everything Nick Earnshaw will want to get to, but we're going to try today here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Nick, welcome in. How you doing today?
How are you, Josh? It's always better to be over-prepared than under-prepared. You need more nuggets. You just save them. You bag them. You put them in the fridge, and you save them for the next day. You have some leftover nuggets maybe we get to tomorrow. Now, sometimes you make a new batch because these teams give us a few more things to talk about. So, if we get to all of them, we get to all of them. But, we're going to have a good time. And I love the question you posed today. I totally forget about some of these holidays. Let me tell you, I know the big ones like Christmas, Thanksgiving, Halloween. Totally forgot Valentine's Day was Saturday. Walked in, I got a Valentine from Billy Schwein. He gave me like one of those hearts, the heart candies, a little box of those. That was the most. My mom gave me a Valentine's Day gift too. So they were my 2 Valentines this year. Billy Schwein and my mom.
Hey man, listen. At least I got nothing. So
hey,
at least
I'll take it. Some chocolates. I got a Domino's gift card. It was awesome. It was awesome. We'll take it. That's I'll enjoy it. I got to watch Entourage on my Valentine's Day and get my car looked at. So that was my Valentine's Day on Saturday.
I as you know, I was out and about the Mike Seaford
Yes, you were.
Run Walk for Autism. So I was out and about almost the entire day.
Oh yeah. Yep. It was a fascinating day on Saturday. But guess what? It's President's Day today. And you are, asking everyone for their Mount Rushmore, right? Now, I look at the Mount Rushmore Philly sports. You have to pick one player from each sport.
That's what I was
Baseball, football, basketball, and hockey. 4 majors. You got to pick one from each. All right. You can't double up on. You got to make a tough call. Okay. So I'll give you mine. All right, Josh, and let me know what you think. And I heard you and Mosher talking about the generational aspect of it, which it does have. If you grew up with certain players, you're going to value them more maybe than others. Sure. So I'm going to go with mine. Phillies, Mike Schmidt. Eagles, this might ruffle some feathers. Jason Kelsey.
Oh, good grief.
Sixers, Allen Iverson.
Good.
And Flyers, Bobby Clark. Those are my
All right. So you went with a couple of OGs.
Yes.
And then with a couple guys in the 21st century.
Sure.
I think the only name that you mentioned that's going to get pushed back is Kelsey.
Yes. I think Kelsey because, listen, the speech has to play into it. I'm not just looking on the field. I'm also looking the impact off the field. Jason Kelsey has had a massive impact off the field. He's had a massive impact on the organization, has had a massive impact in the community. He's very well known, very well loved as a Philadelphia Eagle, spent his entire career with the Philadelphia Eagles. I think that should play a role into it. He had the great speech, the mummers at the first Super Bowl parade. That has to play a role, and that made him into more of an icon in this city. So that's why I go Kelsey.
So really quick, before we move on, because you mentioned with they played their whole career with one team.
Iverson did not. I understand.
Someone else mentioned that as well, that we need to give priority to that. And it's like, well, there's no Sixer who played their entire career with the Sixers.
No.
So it's like, Will, Dr. J, Iverson, Barkley, they all played with somebody else at some point. So it's like when you started using these, like, they played with one team, I just kind of shrugged my shoulders and I'm like, am I really going to hold that against somebody?
That shouldn't be the end all be all, but I think it should play a role into who you're factoring in to being on the Mount Rushmore. That's why I think Kelsey, that should play a factor. He played his entire career here. He played center, not an easy position. The fact he was able to do what he has done in his career as a center.
I've got a lot of votes for Concrete Charlie. A lot of votes.
I know. He played both. He was last of the two-way player. I understand. But Narek, I'm not going to fault you. I grew up with Kelsey. I'm going to put him on my list.
I mean, listen, I don't hate your choice. I'm just trying to, I'm just trying to explain to you, you're the only person who picked him.
That's fine. And I usually am. I'm usually alone in a lot of arguments over here. So I'm used to it. I'm used to it.
Yeah. You and Nick Foles.
Yeah. You're lucky I didn't put him because, I said, do I want to ruffle some feathers today real good? I mean, I could have chosen Nick Foles and put him on there. I'll just take my stance and retire at his number. Okay. I'm not going to change that. He could be on the Mount Rushmore. I could see him being on some people's Mount Rushmore. I have no problem with that. Not on mine. Not the Mount Rushmore.
I'm just saying there's a difference between a Mount Rushmore of all the Philly sports and a Mount Rushmore of just a team. They're like,
now, if we just did the Eagles, we're talking a different
conversation.
Totally different.
Totally different. Same with the Flyers, by the way. For example, we were talking earlier, I was like, if I did a Flyers Mount Rushmore only,
okay.
You could argue it's like Bobby Clark, Bernie Perrant, Eric Lindros, and then maybe like Brian Propp, right?
Sure.
that could be your 4. We had one person texting earlier about Claude Giroux, and I'm like, no.
Yeah, I did hear you talk about that. I love Claude. Great flyer, great player.
Very
not
good
Mount
player.
Rushmore worthy.
Very good.
Yes. Hall of very
good.
Yes, correct. I'm with you there. Now, if we went just Eagles, the Folesian Society over here. Oh, man.
Yeah, you'd be in real trouble over there.
Yeah. He might take up every single spot on my Mount Rushmore. But
let me save you from yourself. And let's get the nugget number 1 here.
All right, let's get into these nuggets real quick. Nugget number 1. I got to talk about All-Star Weekend, okay? It was not horrible this year, okay? It was not horrible. That's my stance on the entire All-Star Weekend. I watched the entire three-point contest. Very entertaining. Dame Lillard, I know he's playing on one leg and, he hasn't played all year. Very weird, but okay. Him and Devin Booker were entertaining as anything. Con Kneppel had an unbelievable first round. I thoroughly enjoyed the three-point contest. Now, the time that it was played at, didn't love that. 5 o'clock in the afternoon, leading into the Olympics. Didn't love that. But I loved watching the 3-point contest. I thought the 3-point contest thoroughly entertaining. Dunk contest, that I turned off. Okay, after Jackson Hayes messed up his footing and just dunked a regular dunk, I was out. I turned it off, finished out my final season of Entourage, and called it a night. That I was over with. Now, yesterday, the entirety of the All-Star game, that I thoroughly enjoyed. Okay, that I thought was very entertaining. And the reason it was entertaining is because guys showed effort. Okay, they showed effort. That's all you can ask, is that they show effort in these games. That's what has been lost. That's why a lot of the luster's been lost. They've also not marketed it properly, but that's another story for another day. But the effort from the players has not been there over the course of the past few years. And we have some sound from Tyrese Maxey talking about the young stars because they're a little young and turned. Take a listen.
We won because we young and turned. Our young group, man, Andy Book.
All right, so before you say anything else, we need you to translate because there has never been a point, like usually I can at least decipher or know what's being said. I don't know what, because I know what young is, but let's play the whole thing again.
We won because we young and turned. Our young group, man, Andy Book.
So what does turn and Andy be booked mean? Like, explain to us old people.
Well, turn is just you're fired up. Okay, you have a lot of energy. That's essentially what turn.
So basically, it's a shorter version of turned up.
Sure. Yes. Correct.
Okay.
That's essentially what it means. That they were playing with energy. They had energy. They're young. They're ready to go. Okay. Now the old heads like the KDs of the world, all those guys, they're the ones we need to get rolling here. And that's what I took from that. And listen, you saw Kawhi Leonard actually, I think that might be the most effort he's put in a basketball game in about 3 years, but that was awesome. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And Edwards was fantastic. Now, was the format great? I was still confused. I saw multiple posts on how the format worked. Still didn't get it.
The format was a little weird, okay? The format was weird. Now, I will tell you, I did not watch it live. I watched it replayed later. Okay, so I did not watch it in real time. So I kind of already knew what happened, before I watched it, because I actually forgot I was on, to be honest.
Yeah.
I was watching a documentary on Netflix. So.
Well, I think a lot of people might have, because the stands were not very filled up either. So, but I thought overall it was a better All-Star weekend than we've had in the past. It was one of the better ones over the past course of the last few years. So I enjoyed that. And PJ Carlesimo also kind of agreed with that sentiment.
The coaches kind of steered them a little bit and said, hey, we want to win this. And the players bought in. It was great. And it was more than a few. Like early on, like I was we were looking for guys to say, hey, they're really competing. After a while, we just stopped. I mean, it was Cade Cunningham. It was, Jalen Duren. A couple of Pistons did it. Kawhi, he was unbelievable. Ant-Man right from the beginning. Karl Anthony Towns early. Jaylen Brown in one of the early games, they look like they're playing to get the MVP. Kevin Durant always plays hard. It could be out in the playground. He's going to play hard. A lot of guys had bought in, and it was easily the most competitive basketball we've seen in many a year.
I'm totally with him there. I thought it was one of the more competitive games that we have seen in a while. I mean, there was a couple of games. I know it was a tournament style, but just overall, just much more effort. And that's what it needed. It needed guys to give some effort. Now, will it change much heading into next year? I don't know. Are they going to change, go back to East-West? Whatever they do, I don't care. I actually semi-enjoyed the All-Star weekend this year. Even though there was other things I could complain about, the effort was there. I enjoyed the All-Star game. I enjoyed them actually playing hard, and I enjoyed the three-point contest. The dunk contest, that's another story. But those two events, I was in on.
So I think that what Ant Edwards said last night was, I think, part of the thing. Because he said, because he put it into Wembanyama. Because he said when Wembanyama came out, guns a-blazing, he was like, oh, it's what we're doing? Okay. And so it was like, it's almost like he admitted what the problem was, Nick. They just need one guy. They need one guy to go out there and be like, we're doing this. And it reminded me of, did you ever see the documentary about the 2008 Olympic team?
Yes.
About when Kobe was like, yo, I'm going to go take out Powell.
Pau Gasol, yes.
And guys are like,
what?
That's your teammate. He's like, I don't care. I'm here to
Not
win.
now.
F him, And so they talked about in the documentary how Kobe set the tone for that team
Yep.
by saying we ain't playing pickup basketball. We're going out all in. And I think that's kind of what Ant Edwards was saying. Edwards was saying, look, when Wemby went out there and was like guns a-blazing, he was like, well, we're going to do that too. And that's why Tyrese Maxey also said this last night about he didn't come to score, Nick Earnshaw. He said he came to do this.
I don't know. Like, we wanted to play hard. Like, it doesn't matter what the format was. I knew I came in like, man, listen, I'm going to play some defense. I'll score when I can, but I want to just play hard, bring energy, get some steals, and have fun.
I mean, that's the mentality of the young guys. You know what? The NBA is in good hands.
Yeah, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. Now, the logistics of the whole thing and the tournament style and the type of game, that's a whole nother story.
They probably should have done 4 teams instead of 3.
Sure.
They probably should have found a way to maybe break up the teams a little more. But you know what? It was fine because it worked out in the end.
I didn't turn it off. I watched all the games. I had it on. While I was cooking dinner, the whole thing. Like, it was great. Like, the dunk contest, I was out. That was awful. That was a disgrace. But the All-Star game itself, the tournament that they had, and the 3-point contest, I thoroughly enjoyed and was entertaining because you saw effort from those guys. If the young guys are going to put in effort, then you can go back to East versus West. You can do that again. If they're going to put in time, effort, I'm not saying you got to treat it like the NBA Finals, but you can't be just throwing the ball out of bounds like Drewski was doing in the one contest they were doing. He was throwing it into the stands. I mean, that's what you were seeing over the past couple of years. So if you have the foundation of the guys are going to buy in and give effort and show a little pride out there, then guess what? I think you got a chance to save this thing. If not, this thing's going to continue to go down the tubes and nobody's going to care and nobody's going to watch and nobody's going to show up.
You're 100% right.
All right. Thank you. That's all I needed. That's all I needed to hear. I felt like I was. So nugget number 2. Let's move on. Let's get to baseball. All right. Bryce meets with the media yesterday. Woke up to that gem of a press conference. I love the entire setting of the press conference down at spring training by everybody, either in a lot of wind, out next to the baseball field, in the dirt, wherever you got to get the stuff done, you got to do it. And, Bryce does it yesterday. He finally reacts. We get a response to Dave Dombrowski comments made at the end of the year last season. Take a listen to what Bryce had to say.
For Dave to come out and say those things, it's kind of wild to me still. I mean, they made the shirts for me, and I wore them, So, I mean, if they're going to make them, I'm going to wear them.
Did you have a chance to talk to Dave about what he meant by what he was saying or why he did say it?
I just think the conclusion is, obviously we keep things in-house, and that's just how how it's always been. And in that moment, it just didn't happen, and, I think my locker is always open for them to come and talk to me and vice versa. So, it is what it is right now.
It's funny because the same phrase we heard from Kyle Schwarber, it is what it is. It just seems like these guys are over all of the nonsense and the ish as of right now, whether it's Dombrowski's comments, it's Castellanos' antics, all of that. It seems like they just want to play and they're just over all of the outside stuff that is so unnecessary for this team to win ball games. That's the sentiment I got from Bryce yesterday for the most part. And, he knows what he was doing with the T-shirt. All right, let's not be coy about the whole thing, Bryce.
That's the worst part of his answer.
You knew what you were doing. So let's stop with I was just going to wear the T-shirt. I mean, come on. Dude.
Nick, listen, I talked with Geoff Kerr about this in the last hour about how, if Geoff Kerr brought up the analogy, if you're a Miller Lite guy, someone hands you a Bud Light shirt, you're not wearing it, right?
Right.
I made the analogy of because Harper's he's Adidas, right? So it's like,
I thought he was Under Armour. Under Armour.
Well, let's say he's Under Armour, but someone came up with a Nike shirt. He's going to wear it, someone hands it to him? No, of course they're not. Like, the explanation that, someone handed me a shirt and I wore it. Like, that was the worst part of the whole thing. Like, I don't understand why Harper... Here's the problem. Guys want to be Jordan, but they don't want to be Jordan. They still want to be liked. Like, did you see the way... people have criticized Jalen Hurts. Oh, you're trying to be like Jordan with the trophy and the cigar. Well, guys love to be like, I'm like Jordan. I have a chip on my shoulder. But then, instead of coming out and being the bad guy in that sense, they want to be liked. Oh, well, it's not like that. No.
Yeah, listen, just go watch The Last Dance. You'll understand what Jordan was, okay? Like, there's a lot that he had to sacrifice, okay? He was not a well-liked teammate. He just wasn't. He turned a lot of people off. He punched Steve Kerr, for goodness sake. I mean, he was not a beloved teammate. He just wasn't. He asked a lot out of you, which you could also look at in a way, depending on the lens you're looking through. He was a good teammate because he pushed everybody. Could have been too much? Sure. But I listen, it seemed like to me, Bryce is just over it. He's just over it. And, he took personally what Dave had to say. It was clear. The T-shirt thing was on purpose. He's not going to post about it. He's not going to put that out. He's very calculated, Mr. Bryce Harper is, okay? We know that. We've known him for a long time. That was done on purpose. And he's just trying to be coy about it, okay? We know what it was. We know that the comments, he wants to, he could say all he wants, that, hey, it's not going to motivate me. And I push his buttons a little bit. Let's be real here, Bryce.
Well, before we let you go, because we're running out of real estate here, Nick, but I did see that you put something on Twitter yesterday, which was Nick Castellanos' comments to the Padres media, or whoever was there. I don't even know who's in the Padres media anymore. There's only one team in San Diego, but I digress. Castellanos on his time in Philadelphia.
Nick, seemingly everyone in baseball has had an opinion on your ending in Philadelphia. Is there anything? Yeah, I know. Is there anything you wish could have gone different, or kind of an open-ended question? What do you wish had gone differently there, maybe?
That we would have won a World Series.
What about you personally, though? You're just that.
I think winning solves everything. So I think the one thing that I wish would have ended up different is that we would have won.
The season ended, Nick. Did you think you were gone?
I had a good idea.
Yeah.
Listen, yeah, I wish they would have won too. 2022, probably 23 too, if they didn't choke it away and Castellanos didn't, barely get a hit in games 2 through 7 in the CS. Who knows? Maybe they would have won. That's that, Josh.
But now we got Guns a-Blazing Garcia in right field.
Oh, yeah, the guy's ripped. The guy's ripped. Never could be me. Will never be me.
He's Nick Earnshaw. Nick's Nuggets will be on tomorrow. He'll be an hour earlier tomorrow for the Nuggets here on 97.3 ESPN. Nick, take care of yourself. Talk soon.
Talk soon, Josh. Peace.
Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill here on the Sports Bash on 97.3 ESPN. Coming up the other side, we will check back in on the text board, 609-403-0973. Your White Horse RV texts on your Mount Rushmore of Phillies sports, your reactions to Bryce Harper's comments, Tyrese Maxey shining an All-Star weekend, all that and more. Still to come. Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill. 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app, powered by First Bank of Seattle City, streaming live on YouTube and X at 97.3 ESPN.
South Jersey's official play-by-play home of the Eagles, Sixers, and Flyers.
At 0 point would I ever consider not being a fan of the team.
97.3 ESPN, WENJ, WENJ HD, Millville, Atlantic City. A Town Square media station serving all of South Jersey.
Five o'clock hour of the Sports Bash. Josh Hennig filling in for Mike Gill, 97.3 ESPN FM. 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle City. Streaming live on YouTube and X as we round out the show. We are going to get back to the Whitehorse RV text board in just a bit at 609-403-0973. Plus, We'll hear some more from Tyrese Maxey. He had a lot to say, actually, after the big win for the U.S. yesterday. And I feel like Tyrese Maxey more and more is turning into like that guy that everybody just loves him. You just love him. The guy can do almost no wrong. I think part of the reason why we view him that way is because Maxey has shown himself to be everything you want your favorite athlete to be, but then they turn out to be like Bryce Harper, and they'll say or do something that annoys you. We'll get back to a lot of votes coming in on the White Horse RV text board. Again, President's Day. Mount Rushmore favorite Philadelphia sports athletes. Got to pick one from every team. I'm going to compile all the names at the end of the show. We'll put up a couple polls at 973 ESPN on the X platform, and we will later this week announce the final tally results of who is on the Philly Sports Mount Rushmore, and I'm sure some of you will still not be happy with it. Again, 609-403-0973, the White Horse RV text board, White Horse RV Center in Williamstown and Galloway. Your RV adventure starts here at White Horse RV. Yeah, it's one of those situations where I think that what we saw this weekend with the All-Star game, and I'm glad that Nick Earnshaw went in this direction. It seems like some of you out there listening feel the same way. Angie Tucker says, I agree with Nick about All-Star Weekend, except for when it comes to the last game. I think the OGs tanked in the last game, but Wembanyama set the tone. Props to him. And I think that's correct. It's the idea that the players themselves set the tone. And I think that is a huge part of the conversation, because when a guy like Tyrese Maxey says that he didn't come to score first, he came to do this, it gives you a lot of input about the younger player's perspective.
I don't know. We wanted to play hard. It doesn't matter what the format was. I knew I came in man, listen, I'm going to play some defense. I'll score when I can, but I want to just play hard, bring energy, get some steals, and have fun.
Listen to that. You have a professional basketball player from North America who views playing basketball as not just scoring points. What a concept. That's what made it much more enjoyable. Because when I watched it later last night, I'm watching it thinking, wait, this is a basketball game. They're playing basketball. It wasn't just guys chucking threes or throwing missed alley-oop dunks. It was actually, literally, basketball being played. This song got off in my head. This is what happened yesterday. They played basketball. I think this is what the players sometimes miss. The fans just want to see real sports. You know why nobody cares about the Pro Bowl? Because it's a fraction of a real football game. The reason why people still like the baseball All-Star game is because they actually play baseball. If they can find a way to take what happened yesterday in the All-Star game and playing basketball and actually do it for every year, I think the NBA would very, very quickly see All-Star Weekend rocket back up to the top. More from Tyrese Maxey on the game yesterday that involved the young players really stepping up.
Oh, man, listen, Wemby's a competitor, and that's, for our game, we appreciate that. I think it brings the best out of all of us, And said, listen, he saw Wemby going at it, and that's what turned Ant up, you know what I mean? So it's really good, man. I have no problem with that. I want to play like a real game anyway. It's better for me.
I love how he said, I want to play a real game anyway. It's better for me. It just goes to show you why Tyrese Maxey has probably become the most popular Sixer in the city, if not one of the most popular players in general in the city of Philadelphia. when we have this Mount Rushmore conversation in about like 15, 20 years from now again, Maxey might have to be in the conversation because of what he has done and how well he has handled himself in public, on a microphone, on the court. He's just become everything you'd hope a player would be. And he's right. The moment Wembanyama, and Anthony Edwards said the same thing, the moment that Wembanyama went out there and asserted himself that this is going to be a competitive game, that was the moment you were like, all right, I see what's going on here. We're going to play a real basketball game. Tyrese Maxey on all the great young stars who were in action yesterday. It might help if I hit the right button. Here we go.
I definitely think that we're ready to try to keep, stepping forward. We had a lot of guys in that locker room who are ready to take next steps. Ant, K, myself, D-Book is still ascending upwards, I think. Chet, JD, Scotty, all those guys, man. So that was a good group.
Listen, I love to hear from Maxey. I love his perspective. He does a lot to help you kind of feel that good vibe when it comes to the All-Star game. And I think for a lot of people, I think a lot of people realize that outside of the three-point shooting competition, nobody cares about the rest of Saturday. The rest of Saturday is a joke. I didn't watch a single minute of it live. I didn't watch a single bit of it replayed. I saw some highlights late Saturday night, and I didn't care. It's cute that Dame Lillard went out there and won three-point competition, but nobody really cares. Like, we care because we like the story. We care because the three-point shooting competition has become the apex competition, what used to be the dunk competition. The stars show up to shoot threes. They don't show up to dunk. So at least it's good to hear that guys like Maxey, guys like Ant Edwards, that those guys are actually caring about performing and competing in the All-Star game. And I love how Anthony Edwards continues to not want to put himself on a pedestal. The media keeps trying to put him there. And I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus. Malika Andrews, she's doing her job, right? She's following up on what Victor Wembanyama said. For those who didn't hear, Victor Wembanyama was asked at the press conference about the face of the NBA debate.
Social media, NBA can promote whoever they want, but at the end of the day, it's going to be the best players and who the people ask for, It's never, like being the face of the league is not something, it's something that can be manufactured, but only to some extent. And it's only going to be the best players. So this is what it's all about.
So then Malika Andrews asked Anthony Edwards about what Victor Wembanyama said moments later.
You had said, why do I need to be the face of the league? Y'all have Victor Wembanyama, but we see a world versus USA format here. Why not have a world and USA face of the league?
I'm cool with that. I ain't going against that.
All right, so two faces of the league.
Two faces is cool with me.
And you're one of them?
If I get there.
I love how he still pushes back on it. Like, Ant Edwards is like, I ain't nobody. And the dude's like one of the best players in the league. But he's acting like it's no big deal. Right? Like he's acting like he ain't nobody when he is a somebody. And it just goes to show you that there are still young athletes like Tyrese Maxey and Anthony Edwards who are not just there for the cash. They're not just there for the money. They're not there for the celebrity. They're there to play basketball. They're there to compete, to try to win a championship. And you got to love to at least see there's still a little hope when it comes to sports in this world with these young men. And you know what? It's a good thing we don't have any more people in the league today. And I know someone's going to get mad when I say this, but, your Gilbert Arenases, your Steve Francis's, your basketball players who are not there to play basketball, they're there for the collective paycheck that comes with the basketball. All right, let's get back to the Whitehorse RV text board, 609-403-0973. Ray and EHC chimes in. So I thought it was a great All-Star game, probably the best All-Star game in at least a decade. I heard people complaining about day 2, which should have been. He said, I thought it was the Rising Stars game was good too. Yeah, the Rising Stars game was good. VJ Edgecombe was the MVP. He had a great showing. And I thought the Rising Stars was great as well, Ray and EHT. The fact that they show the players compete. They were actually trying to win. They weren't just chucking up threes the whole time. Ray goes on to say the 3-point competition was awesome. I think the NBA finally got it right with the All-Star game itself. They can build on this. Who knows what can come? I love to see them play for real. I watched a repeat of the 2001 All-Star game with Allen Iverson, and they played competitively as well. He says, by the way, I like Victor's comments. It was awesome that it comes natural, that I'm not the face. Nobody's the face. You don't come to ask to be the face of the league. Yeah, it's absolutely right. This idea of guys don't want to be the face of the league, right? Until someone tells them. They don't want to be, don't crown me, right? Stephen AHC says, don't compare Ant Edwards to Maxey. Maxey's all around stand-up dude. Edwards is a scumbag. Wow, that's Stephen EHT. I would love some documentation about Edwards not being a good guy. And even if he wasn't a great guy, you can still respect him as a basketball player. You can still respect that he's one of the best players on the planet. All right, I see your reply there. I can't verify that personally. I have to look into that information. I would just say to that there's a lot of people, athletes and non-athletes, who have that claim to their name. I would just ask you to bring that same energy to people like Tyreek Hill. To people like, other athletes who do. If you're bringing that same energy to the other athletes who do that, then I'm cool with it. If you're just going after Ant Edwards, then I'm not cool with it. I'm just saying that, on the court, it's the mentality of the athlete, how they look at the game, how they approach the game, how they play the game. And I'm using Anthony Edwards, Tyrese Maxey, Victor Wembanyama. I think they're all to be applauded, Stephen EHT. Their personal lives, that's another conversation. I would need to look into that more myself to verify those accusations or that information. Maybe not accusation, that information. Let's get back to something a little more fun then, because Stephen EHT ruined the conversation on the Whitehorse RV text board at 609-403-0970. We were talking throughout the show about the Mount Rushmore of Philadelphia sports, because it is President's Day. Had some text coming a little bit earlier. I wanted to follow up with them at 609-403-0973. Jerry Napsekian came back around. He says that his Mount Rushmore is Mike Schmidt, Bernie Perrant, Charles Barkley, and Norm Van Brocklin. All right, so we got one vote for Norm. Norm is not going to win, though. But I like the fact that Jerry kind of mixed it in. Barkley's an interesting one because I think Barkley is way more beloved now than he was years ago. I feel like, when I was younger, there was a perception of Barkley that it was kind of like divided in the city. The city either loved him or hated him. There was almost like a bit of like a Donovan McNabb vibe to him, where it was like people either loved the guy or they hated him. Now, 30, 40 years after he was traded to the Suns, the vibe is very different now. The vibe is much more like Charles is great. Charles is the Chuckster. We love that guy. So Barkley's a very interesting figure in these conversations. Very, very interesting figure in these conversations. Jerry, I'm seeing good chiming in from you on the Whitehorse RV text board at 609-403-0973. Brian in EHC chimes in and says, Mike Schmidt was a dominant third baseman for over a decade. Reggie was the most dominant defensive end of all time. Dr. Jim was a revolutionary player for the game. Bobby Clark centered an absolute dominant team. If you had a fifth spot for Mount Rushmore, you could add Joe Frazier into the conversation. That's Brian EHT. Brian, first of all, huge respect to you for bringing up Joe Frazier. Smoking Joe, he made himself as integral to Philadelphia as any athlete has. You know, I know a lot of fans look at Rocky, the fictional Philadelphia legend, but don't realize that Joe Frazier lived and trained in the Philadelphia area for decades. And when his career was over, he stayed up here. He could have moved back to the South and, going back, and lived, a very quiet life somewhere in the South. But he said, no, I want to live my life up here. I want to stay in the area, And it's a good pull by you, Brian EHT. Listen, I love the Reggie White polls. I'm a big fan of that one. To me, the Eagles comes down to Reggie White or Brian Dawkins. I think most of us agree that Mike Schmidt is going to be the Phillies guy. Dr. J getting a way more votes than I expected. I'm actually impressed that we haven't gotten as many Barkley or Iversons. We've got almost universal Dr. J's so far. Paul on EHT chimes in the White Horse RV text board at 609-403-0973. Paul says, why doesn't Tim Kerr get more love from Flyers fans? I would say that he doesn't get more love because I think that Kerr was kind of always viewed as... Now, this is my perspective, all right? I've always looked at Kerr as someone who was a little overshadowed by the others. Kerr's one of the greatest Flyers of all time. I mean, I got to double check, but I believe he had, 3 or 4 50-goal seasons? Like, he had a run where he was like the best of the best of the best of the best. But I think that because he came up in an era where you still had guys like Bill Barber out there and Reggie Leach, and then when those guys were gone, and when he was having those monster seasons, the Flyers, they didn't always have the success. My opinion, I'm just going to come out and say it. My opinion is that there's a group of people who are Flyers fans who treat the 70s teams like they're better than every other team because they won championships, when we forget that the other teams ran into a buzzsaw called the Edmonton Oilers, and then the 90s, the Detroit Red Wings. The Flyers literally had teams that ran into dynastic hockey teams. But we act like those teams were lesser because they didn't win a championship. And it's such a horrible way to look at all of this. It's such a horrible way to treat those players. And so I think that the Tim Kerrs, the Brian Props, I'm trying to think if there's somebody else I'm forgetting about. I don't know. I mentioned Hextall earlier. Tocchet was part of some of those teams back in the day. Ron Suter, Dave Poulin. I'm forgetting somebody obvious I should be remembering. But the larger point is that there were a lot of guys from that era who were great players, but I think that it was always held against them that they were unable to follow up. When it's like, well, no offense, but Ron Hextall was never as great as Bernie Perron. And those Flyers teams that won the championships in the 70s, they were not facing, legendary dynastic teams and losing to them. And I think that's what gets forgotten about the Flyers organization, that they had some years where things were great, and they had other years where things were not as great. So I think that Kerr gets overlooked because, again, I think a lot of people look at that era of Flyers hockey without giving it the respect that it deserves. Geoff in Ocean City chimes in at 609-403-0973. As long as Nick Earnshaw doesn't put Foles on his Mount Rushmore, I'm good with whatever he says. Angie in Tuckerton follows up and says, only thing worse than the dunk contest is having to listen to any more audio of Nick Castellanos. Can we please stop? If Nick Castellanos just went away and never came back, I'd be perfectly fine with it. Perfectly fine with it. I have zero time for Nick Castellanos' shenanigans. You know, by the way, I was at the Mike Seafood Run Walk for Autism on Saturday. Amazing day, amazing event. I'll be posting an article later today, 973ESPN.com, recapping it. Jason Kelsey came out, so did Kylie. They had a second straight year of record attendance. But while we were out there, you know, shout out to Shelby, who was helping me on site. There was a guy who tried to interrupt the show because he was mad because he claimed that we mistreated Nick Castellanos. Now, I don't know who the we was. You know, apparently the guy claims that he knows Nick Castellanos personally. You know, a bunch of, shenanigans. I don't really know what was really being said. I only know it was parlayed to me and that I saw the guy try to interrupt the show. The fact that there are people out there who want to defend Nick Castellanos just goes to show you that how crazy the world we live in is. That the toxicity of the other areas of our society infiltrate sports. That there are literally people who treat Nick Castellanos like he's a victim. And they're willing to demand to come on the radio with me while I'm at a fundraiser event at Excursion Park in Seattle City. Just so ridiculous. Oh, man. All right, we got more text coming in. 609-403-0973 on the Whitehorse RV text board. I see text coming in from Tim in Summers Point, as well as some others. We'll get to your text coming up on the Whitehorse RV text board. 609-403-0973. Josh Hennig hanging out with you, filling in for Mike Gill here on a Monday edition of the Sports Bash, President's Day. 973 ESPN FM, 973 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle City. And we are streaming live on YouTube and X at 973 ESPN.
You're listening to the Sports Bash with Mike Gill.
And if you're not down with that, we got 2 words for you.
On 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app. We have the perfect solution for sitting in traffic.
You come with me.
The Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN and the 97.3 ESPN free mobile app.
.5:30 here on the Sports Bash. Josh Hennig filling for Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN FM. Don't forget to listen to the show as well on the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle City. All Sports Bash episodes are podcasted wherever you get your podcasts, and we are streaming live, as always, on YouTube and X. We'll get back to the Whitehorse RV text board in just a bit at 609-403-0973. I did want to point out something I saw earlier, and I really only thought of it again because I heard the sports anchor update mention about the Flyers are off for the Olympics right now. You know, I haven't got to watch a lot of the Olympics, mostly because the timing of it just not great for me personally, but I got to see over my shoulder. So apparently the Japanese pairs of figure skating team, the man and woman who won their competition, they were very overcome with emotion that they won. And I thought it was really cool that the other figure skaters, the other pairs, the man and the woman pairs, the couples who came over to them one by one and congratulated them and kind of gave them like, hey, this is real, you deserve this kind of thing. And it was just a really cool moment. And I feel like that's one of those are the kind of Olympic moments that stand out to me over the years. Now is like the show of sportsmanship, the show of camaraderie among these athletes who you spent your entire life training for this one moment, this one day, this one situation. And now you're kind of seeing it play out in real time. And so I thought that was very cool. That was a very cool moment to see in the Olympics. Again, I haven't watched a lot of the Olympics, so I'm sure there might have been other instances I think that that's where, again, for me, those are the cool moments of the Olympics, and I'm just a big fan of sportsmanship. I really am. Tim from Summers Point trying to make me laugh like Andrew in Summers Point, but Andrew Summers Point did a better job with his. Because what Andrew did was he gave me 2 legitimate ones, and then he gave me a couple of not so legitimate ones. So when you read it, it kind of like, built itself up to be funny. I think Tim at Summers Point gave you his least likely to be on Philadelphia Mount Rushmore. So for the Sixers, he has Todd McCullough. For the Eagles, he has Reno Mahe. For the Phillies, he has Mickey Morandini, which is kind of unfair because Morandini was actually a solid player compared to the other two. And then he has Billy Tibbett for the Flyers. So, yeah, Tim at Summers Point, you tried something. Another text coming on the White Horse RV text board at 609-403-0970 says, would you consider Carl Lewis a Philly legend? Not really. Carl Lewis is more closely identified with New Jersey than Philadelphia. I mean, I got to double check, but didn't Carl Lewis go to Rancocas High School? He went to Willingboro. Yeah, that's still very New Jersey. To me, what made Joe Frazier Philly is that he lived and trained in the city of Philadelphia. But he also was a transplant. He was originally from South Carolina before he came up here. Carl Lewis, to me, I've always associated more with New Jersey than I did with Philadelphia. So, but again, that's me. I might be wrong about it. There might be other ties to the city of Philadelphia I don't know about off the top of my head, but that's how I look at it. Anonymous texter chimed in at 609-403-0970. He says, Josh, you're not being truthful about Flyers history. The Flyers in the 70s went up against the dynamic Boston Bruins team that one year, and one of the Hall of Famers up and down the line of that Boston team. So, first of all, this is why people don't leave their name, because they're getting mad at me without fully understanding what I was saying. Okay. So, let me reverbalize this, okay? There is a level of reverence that is given to the 70s Flyers teams that is not given to the other Flyers teams, because those Flyers teams won and the others didn't. And it's overlooked that the teams that the Flyers lost to, for example, in the 80s, because the earlier texter brought up Tim Kerr, right? That the Flyers lost to some amazing teams, and it shouldn't be held against them that they did. And I get it. The 70s Flyers went to the Stanley Cup final, was it 3 straight years? And sure, I'll pull up that Boston Bruins team that was loaded with Hall of Famers, and I don't doubt that it has loaded Hall of Famers. I mean, off the top of my head, I know they had Bobby Orr. They had Bobby Orr. Let's see who else they had. Phil Esposito. Who else had a great season that year? I don't know. Is Ken Hodge in the Hall of Fame? He's not in the Hall of Fame, but he probably should be based on his stats. Wayne Cashman had a good year that year. Who was their goaltender? Let's see here. Yeah, I'm not familiar with the goaltender. Okay, but still, 2 elite players. Cool. And listen, Boston was a great team in the 70s as well. In fact, when the Flyers lost that Stanley Cup after winning 2 straight, they lost to the Canadiens. That's a dynastic organization with a lot of history. But I'm specifically looking at the fact that they lost 4-1 to the Oilers. That Oilers team is one of the greatest teams of all time. Like, you're talking about Gretzky, you're talking about Messier, you're talking about Coffey and Curry, and just up and down the lineup. I mean, those Oiler teams were just ridiculous. And then people forget that the one Flyers team, they went blow for blow with the Oilers one year, a couple years later. Now, Kerr, I believe, was injured for that team, and that's why he didn't have much of an impact on that run. But my goodness, you still had a great Flyers team that went blow for blow with one of the greatest teams of all time, and they lost. And again, my opinion is that there is a perspective from the fan base, whether we want to admit it or not, that we regard the teams that won more than the teams that didn't in hockey because they were the first to do it. And we'll overlook the fact that, when they lost to the Islanders, it was one of the greatest Islander teams of all time. They lost twice to the Oilers, two of the greatest Oiler teams of all time. So it's like, okay, great. But we're going to hate you or not regard you in the same context just because you didn't win? I don't know. Maybe I don't have the right perspective on it. Maybe I'm not the right person to ask about it because of my age or whatever. But, I look at it always as, I think that a lot of people have always treated the Flyers organization, the guys in the 70s, with a level of regard that is probably a little too aggressive, right? I got to pull it up. What did Tim Kerr finish his career with? Because I know a couple of injuries derailed some of his statistical achievements. Let me see here. Where's Tim Kerr on this list? Yeah, so he's 7th all-time in points scored in Flyers history. The only people ahead of him are Eric Lindros, Rick McLeish, Brian Propp, Bill Barber, Claude Giroux, and Bobby Clark. Bobby Clark's the only guy with over 1,000 points in his career in Flyers history. So, there you go. Kerr's 3rd all-time in goals. So, maybe he does a little bit, maybe he deserved a little bit more respect. Again, I think it just depends on perspective. That's what I was trying to say earlier, but as usual, if someone gets frustrated or unhappy about something I say, because I'm Josh Hennig and I approve this message. No, I'm just kidding. 609-403-0973. Who was a worse Sixer, Sean Bradley or Ben Simmons? Oh, boy. Chris in Northfield dropping the who's the worst. Sean Bradley had the worst career, but Ben Simmons had the worst moments. Because Sean Bradley, I don't think it was even ever an all-star, if I remember correctly. Sean Bradley, he was so, just underwhelming and disappointing that it was like the man was never going to live up to it, and he just didn't try anymore. I mean, I know he led the league in blocks one year, but that guy was supposed to be like a double-double machine for his entire career, and it just never happened. And he played way better in Dallas than I think he did in the Sixers uniform. So, I don't know. He never, ever, ever got close to living up to expectations. He had a nice career. Ben Simmons actually had a better career than Sean Bradley because Ben Simmons, he at least became an all-star. He at least was, an all-defensive player. He at least had accolades that vindicated his being drafted as high as he was. The problem was Ben had worse moments. Ben had the stupid situation where he passed the ball versus the Hawks. He had games where he would miss free throws and the Sixers would lose the game. He would have moments where they needed him to step up offensively and he just wouldn't do it. And I think that's why if you were kind of like the offset, to me, it's Sean Bradley was one of the worst careers for a player drafted as high as he was. But it's kind of weird because he still played in the league for almost 15 years because he's 7'6". Ben Simmons was a 3-time All-Star, but he had moments in the postseason where you were just absolutely, utterly disgusted with him. Let's get one more Mount Rushmore coming in. The White Horse RV text board at 609-403-0973. Looks like Geoff in Summers Point is trying to live up to Andrew in Summers Point's Mount Rushmore shtick. Let's see here. He goes Eric Lindros, Larry Hughes, Todd Pinkston, and Bobby Abreu. Wow. Yeah, Todd Pinkston was among those McNabb receivers that we all made fun of for having, I don't know about you guys, but when I was, in my teen years and going into college, we had some nicknames for Todd Pinkston, James Thrash, Reggie Brown, that were not very nice. I'll put it that way. Larry Hughes, wow. I mean, talk about a guy who was a complete and utter fail by the Sixers organization. They literally drafted him with the idea that so for those who don't remember the Larry Hughes story, because I'll never forget it, because this was like prime me coming of age in Philadelphia sports fandom. So I remember Larry Hughes very well because he was a guy who was like this, big point guard at, I believe it was St. Louis. And I remember they drafted him because the idea was that, hey, Larry can play point guard, Allen Iverson can be a shooting guard. Because the whole issue with the Stackhouse situation and why they traded Stackhouse was because they felt that Stackhouse and Iverson were like basically like the same player, right? And I remember the whole thing was like, hey, we got to move on from Stackhouse because of the fact that, him and Iverson are like the same dude, and you can't ask, Iverson to be a point guard for basically a guy who is going to be as ball dominant as he is, right? And so, when they traded Stackhouse, the idea was that they wanted to go find a point guard to play next to Iverson, so Iverson can spend his time being the elite scorer that they thought he could be. And, Stackhouse was part of that huge trade with the Pistons, and the Sixers actually benefited a lot from that trade because they got multiple players who actually end up being a part of their postseason run when they went to the NBA Finals. But, so Hughes was drafted with the express. They weren't drafting for best player available. They were drafting for need that year. And so, and if you remember, for those who don't remember, okay, let me just take you back for a minute. The 1998 draft, which ended up being one of the strangest drafts in the world. That was the year that Antoine Jameson and Vince Carter were drafted back-to-back, and then the teams traded them for each other. Like, that wasn't weird. The Toronto Raptors could have drafted Vince Carter anyway, but whatever. But that was also the year that Michael Olowokandi was taken by the Clippers, number 1 overall. Talk about a huge number 1 overall bust. There were a lot of guys who were drafted highly in that draft who did not work out, right? Your Michael Olowokandis, your Robert Trailers, the guy with the Nuggets, the guy who was left-handed, Rafe LaFrentz. But the important part of the conversation is who was drafted before Larry Hughes. Would have been the guy who would have been perfect for Iverson, which was Jason Williams, nicknamed White Chocolate, right? He was a guy who was a pure point guard. He was a guy who just didn't really need the ball to score, right? And so when they got number 8, the idea was, well, we have to draft Larry Hughes because we need a point guard. And then you have the guys who were drafted after Larry Hughes. Dirk Nowitzki, Paul Pierce. 2 future Hall of Famers who were, Larry Hughes was not as good as those guys on his best day. And so the Larry Hughes thing is always like this like black eye on Philly sports history for me because it's like you could have drafted Paul Pierce or Dirk Nowitzki. Can you imagine Dirk playing next to Iverson? How that tandem would have been? That would have been amazing. Larry Hughes was never going to work with the Sixers. Number one, he came out in the draft way too early. He was way too young to come to a high-pressure situation in Philadelphia. And number two, he was just a bad fit. It didn't make any sense. Hughes was a downhill guy who was playing next to a ball-dominant guy. It was never going to work. It was bad evaluating and scouting by the Sixers organization. You could have had Dirk. Can you imagine that scenario? Dirk Nowitzki and his three-point... Dirk Nowitzki is what the Sixers hoped Keith Van Horn was going to be. And Van Horn was never going to be that guy. Remember the Sixers went through, it was Keith Van Horn. It was Tony Kukoc. Early on it was Derek Coleman. They kept trying to find big men who could help space the floor for Allen Iverson. And it's like, you could have just drafted Dirk Nowitzki. All right, one more break to get to. Sports Bash, Josh Hennig, Philly for Mike Gill. 97.3 ESPN will wrap up the Monday edition of the Sports Bash. If you have any more comments coming in on the White Horse RV text board, we'll get them on the other side. 609-403-0973.
You're listening to the Sports Bash with Mike Gill.
Never thought this radio stunt would catch on so big.
On 97.3 ESPN.
This is the story of the one. As an HVAC technician, he and his digital multimeter are in high demand. So when a noisy office HVAC turns out to be a failing blower motor, he doesn't break a sweat. With Grainger's easy-to-use website and product information, he selects the product he needs to keep everything humming right along. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
All right, wrapping up the show here on 97.3 ESPN. Thanks everybody texting in throughout the show on our little conversation about the Mount Rushmore of Philadelphia sports. Someone texted in that Larry Hughes was a much better Wizard than he was a Sixer. But that's the epitome of Philly sports, right? You draft a guy who's better with somebody else than he is with you. That's how it works, right? Coming up, the best of the Sports Bash here on 97.3 ESPN, followed by Syracuse versus Duke at 7 p.m. here on 97.3 ESPN. Get to hear our conversations with Jeff Kerr, Jeff Mosher, and Mike McGarry. All that next here on the 97.3 ESPN FM. The 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank. Seagull, I'm Josh Hennig. Have a great night, everybody.